Hello, my dear friend of sleepy history. Thank you for coming back. Here, in this quiet corner of night, where the world slows its breath and the stars seem to lean a little closer, we meet again, you and I, to wander through the soft hush of ancient time. Let your worries fall away now. Let the hush of evening cradle you like a tender lullaby. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you must be. Only this moment, only this quiet. In the distance, the ancient heartbeat of the earth still echoes through forgotten oceans and starlit skies, and tonight, we'll follow its rhythm together. Imagine the cool air of prehistoric nights brushing past your skin, the gentle glow of ancient waters, and the promise of stories so old, they hum like lullabies in the dark. No need to open your eyes. Simply let your spirit drift as my voice guides you through time's gentle currents. And before you close your eyes completely, would you leave a little wish beneath this video? A sweet goodnight for someone you'll never meet, but who's resting under the same stars. Let's see which blessing shines the brightest. But remember, no repeating the wishes of those before you. Let's fill the comments with 1,000 unique ways to say, "Sleep well, wherever you are." Now, shall we begin? Part 1. The spread of marine life. 1. The expansion of early coral reefs. A world awakens beneath the waves. Close your eyes for a moment, dear listener. Let the burdens of the day drift away, like fallen leaves carried gently by a stream. Tonight, we'll journey back to a time long before memory, to an ancient world submerged beneath endless blue, where sunlight danced through shimmering waves, and the only voices were the quiet murmurs of the tides. This was the Ordovician period, some 485 million years ago. Earth then was a water world, its continents fragmented into scattered islands and shallow seas. Life clung to these warm, nutrient-rich waters, slowly unfolding in delicate, tentative patterns. The land remained barren and silent, but beneath the ocean's glassy surface, something extraordinary was stirring. Imagine it now, a vast seafloor bathed in pale, silvery light, where soft currents cradled tiny, unfamiliar shapes. Single-celled creatures drifted aimlessly, while clusters of simple organisms gathered in hushed companionship. There was no sound but the pulse of the ocean's breath. Yet within this ancient stillness, life was learning, for the first time, to come together. In many ways, this forgotten world mirrors our own inner landscapes. Just as those primitive life forms floated in solitude, so too do we sometimes drift through life, weighed down by invisible currents of worry and longing. But as you'll see, even in that lonely blue, life would find connection, strength, and meaning. A lesson our weary hearts might still need to remember: the birth of the first limestone corals. Among these delicate creatures, a remarkable innovation was quietly taking shape. Minute, colonial animals known as corals began to build something no life had ever made before: limestone structures, crafted from their own bodies. These early corals, simple yet determined, formed small clusters on rocky outcrops and submerged ledges, creating tiny sanctuaries in a vast, unclaimed ocean. They were unlike the colorful reefs we picture today. There were no brilliant fish darting between branches, no swaying anemones, no dazzling blooms of soft coral. Instead, these early reefs were humble beginnings, fragile, pale mounds of calcium carbonate, layered and secretive, growing grain by grain. And yet, in their quiet labor, these tiny architects reshaped the marine world. Each coral polyp worked with its neighbors, building upon the bones of those who came before. Over time, their limestone homes thickened and spread, forming the first primitive coral reefs in Earth's history. In their stubborn persistence, these creatures offer us a gentle wisdom. Even the smallest efforts, repeated in quiet unity, can create something vast and enduring. Like us, they knew nothing of what lay ahead, but in simply reaching out, in finding strength in togetherness, they began to weave a world greater than themselves. The role of coral reefs in ancient marine ecosystems. As these reefs expanded, they transformed the underwater landscape. No longer a flat, empty plain, the seafloor now boasted structures, crevices, and shaded alcoves where other organisms could take refuge. Small-shelled creatures like brachiopods nestled between coral branches, while primitive mollusks grazed on the soft films of algae that coated the stones. The reefs became oases of life in the endless Ordovician seas. Here, delicate starfish-like creatures clung to surfaces, filtering nutrients from passing currents. Tiny shrimp-like arthropods darted in and out of coral hollows, their movements creating ripples of soft motion in the still waters. Most importantly, these coral structures provided a stable foundation in a world of shifting tides and unpredictable currents. Where open waters swept creatures away, the reefs held firm, a sanctuary amidst the chaos. Life, drawn to this promise of shelter, flourished. And in this way, the reefs remind us of the spaces we build in our own lives, small places of warmth and belonging amid the vastness of our worries. A quiet evening, a trusted friend, the gentle touch of a hand. They may seem insignificant, but they become the anchors we cling to when the world feels too wide. Whispers from the past, the fossil record of Ordovician reefs. Though hundreds of millions of years have passed since those first reefs formed, their story is not entirely lost. In ancient stone beds scattered across the world, the fossilized remains of these primitive corals endure. Their calcified skeletons, turned to stone, whisper of seas long vanished and creatures long forgotten. Geologists and paleontologists study these ancient reef deposits, tracing the patterns of long-dead polyps and the shapes of shells preserved within their embrace. These fossils are more than relics. They are messages from a world before time, reminders that even the smallest life leaves its mark. Some of these reef fossils stretch across entire landscapes, forming the foundations of cliffs, valleys, and rolling hills. It humbles us to realize that the solid ground beneath our feet was once a bustling coral sanctuary, teeming with ancient life. Perhaps in this knowledge there is a quiet comfort. Even when our days feel small, our choices unnoticed, we too leave traces behind. A kind word, a shared moment, a simple act of care. These are our own fossils, pressed into the hearts of those we touch, carried far beyond our knowing. A sanctuary of life and a lesson for the present. By the height of the Ordovician, these coral reefs had become essential hubs of life. They nurtured ecosystems of surprising complexity, supporting hundreds of species in a delicate balance. From the smallest filter feeders to predatory arthropods, all found their place in the sheltered embrace of the reefs. But these reefs offered more than shelter. They calmed turbulent waters, slowed destructive currents, and enriched surrounding areas with nutrients. In doing so, they allowed fragile species to thrive where they might otherwise have perished. There is wisdom here for us in our modern, restless lives. We too need sanctuaries, not of stone or coral, but of time, space, and tenderness. A pause in the day's noise, a moment to breathe, a place, however small, where we are safe to simply be. The ancient reefs remind us that it is in these gentle spaces that life gathers strength, that even in an uncertain world, quiet resilience can shape beauty beyond imagining. And so, as you close your eyes tonight, know that like those early corals, you too are part of something vast and enduring. Each heartbeat a ripple in the great tide of time. Each kindness a stone in the quiet reef we build together. 2. The diversification of invertebrates, the silent architects of the seafloor. Close your eyes once again, dear traveler of ancient time. Let the weight of your present day dissolve like mist as we descend deeper into the silent oceans of the Ordovician. In this vast, watery expanse, beyond the coral sanctuaries we visited, life stirs in quiet, steady rhythms. It is a world devoid of haste, where the heartbeat of the sea pulses softly through sediment and stone. Here, on the sun-dappled seafloor, new forms of life are emerging. Tiny, unassuming creatures, without bones, without armor, yet carrying within them the ancient spark of resilience. They are the silent architects of a new ecosystem, shaping the foundations of the marine world in ways no eye could witness, yet every ripple could feel. These invertebrates, as we call them now, claimed the seafloor as their domain. Their numbers grew, their shapes diversified, and their presence transformed barren stretches of sand into bustling, living mosaics. And like those unseen souls in our own lives who offer quiet strength and steady companionship, these creatures built a world upon which others would depend. Brachiopods and the stars beneath the sea. Among the earliest of these inhabitants were the brachiopods, small, shelled creatures resembling clams, though belonging to an entirely different lineage. They anchored themselves to rocks and coral ledges, their delicate shells opening and closing with the rhythm of the tides, filtering nourishment from the drifting waters. Around them drifted the echinoderms, ancient relatives of starfish and sea lilies, crinoids, with feathery arms waving like underwater flowers, clung to rocks and reefs, capturing tiny particles from the current. These creatures, though simple by modern standards, carried within them the enduring grace of the early oceans. Imagine them now, a gentle forest of living stars beneath the waves, each one moving with the steady breath of the sea. In their persistence, there's a lesson for us, that even the smallest, most unassuming lives, when gathered in quiet purpose, can transform a landscape. The brachiopods and echinoderms of the Ordovician remind us to cherish the simple, enduring acts of presence and connection. The rise of primitive mollusks. Not far from these gentle creatures, a new lineage was rising, the primitive mollusks. Early bivalves, ancestors to modern clams and mussels, burrowed into soft seabeds. Their shells, modest and unadorned, served as shields against the ever-turning currents and the cautious predators of their time. Gastropods, with their spiral shells, began to glide along rocky surfaces and coral fragments. These ancient snails grazed on algae and detritus, shaping the seafloor with their slow, deliberate passage. Though they lacked speed or cunning, their ability to adapt and endure ensured their place in the unfolding story of life. In their quiet resilience, we find a reflection of our own journey. We too face shifting tides, unforeseen obstacles, and unseen trials. Like these mollusks, we learn to carry our shelter with us, to find nourishment where we can, and to leave gentle marks upon the world in our passing. The invisible world, ancient microbial communities. Yet beneath and between these larger beings lay another realm entirely, the invisible world of ancient microbes. Thin films of cyanobacteria coated rocks and coral, photosynthesizing in the faint Ordovician sunlight, producing oxygen and sustaining the delicate balance of gases within the seas. Other microbial communities clung to the surfaces of brachiopods, echinoderms, and mollusks, forming mutualistic partnerships. They cleansed shells, broke down waste, and created protective biofilms, weaving unseen threads of connection throughout the ecosystem. This microbial world, though silent and unseen, was the very breath of the oceans. Like the unnoticed kindnesses in our daily lives, the quiet smile, the small act of care, these microbes sustained the world without expectation of recognition. In their story, we are reminded that strength often lies not in grand displays, but in the steady, unyielding acts of support. A living mosaic and its quiet wisdom. By the heart of the Ordovician, this symphony of invertebrates and microbes had transformed the seas into a living mosaic. Coral reefs hummed with movement, brachiopods clustered in gentle fields, and the echinoderms swayed like ancient stars in the currents. Primitive mollusks traced winding paths through sandy shallows, and microbial films shimmered like delicate veils upon stone. Each being, no matter how small, played its part in the delicate balance of life. And so it is with us. In our own world of unseen battles and silent hopes, each person is a part of something larger, a living reef of connection, resilience, and quiet grace. The ancient seas whisper their wisdom still, to endure, to adapt, and to cherish the quiet bonds that sustain us. Tonight, as you let your thoughts drift into sleep, imagine yourself among those ancient creatures, a quiet presence in a world of blue, moving with the tide, shaping the earth not through force, but through steady, gentle being. 3. A stable web of life, the gentle rhythm of the food chain. As we continue our gentle descent into the ancient seas of the Ordovician, a subtle but wondrous transformation reveals itself. The ocean, once scattered with isolated colonies of coral and drifting invertebrates, has begun to weave its first cohesive tapestry of life. It's a tranquil world of patterns, a quiet, orderly pulse beneath the surface. Plankton, the unseen architects of the food chain, float in shimmering clouds, catching the dim light that filters through the water. These microscopic beings become sustenance for filter feeders like brachiopods and crinoids, who sway gently, catching food on feathery arms. Small predators, nimble arthropods, and ancient cephalopods glide through, seeking opportunity in the drifting currents. Each life form relies on another. In this steady, unhurried rhythm, we find a reflection of our own lives. Just as in these ancient seas, every person plays a role within the delicate balance of community and family. The quiet caregiver, the spirited leader, the thoughtful listener, all are vital to the unseen weave of human connection. The Ordovician Sea reminds us that no existence is too small and no presence too faint to matter. The balance between predator and prey. Among the gentle filter feeders, life finds a quiet balance. Brachiopods, mollusks, and crinoids form the gentle heart of this submerged world, cleansing the water as they feed. But where there is peace, there is also the pulse of hunger, an essential counterweight in nature's scale. Ancient nautiloids, with their spiral shells and keen tentacles, slip through the water like phantoms. Their sharp senses detect the slightest movement, preying upon the unwary. Agile swimming arthropods dart between rocks and corals, sometimes hunters, sometimes hunted. This dynamic keeps the ecosystem alive, each species' fate bound to another's. It's a quiet reminder of life's paradox, that harmony often relies on conflict and challenge sharpens resilience. Much as predators and prey maintain the ocean's health, the struggles and trials in our lives often forge the deepest strengths. The Ordovician's ancient balance teaches us to embrace adversity, to find grace in the difficult, and to remember that every trial serves a greater, unseen purpose. Symbiosis, bonds beyond survival. Beyond the visible hunt and feed, another more intimate story unfolds, one of partnerships. Life in the Ordovician seas isn't only about survival, it's about collaboration. Tiny microorganisms settle upon the shells of brachiopods and crinoids, cleaning debris and offering protection. In return, these hosts offer shelter and a platform to the unseen. Corals welcome threads of ancient algae within their tissues, a mutual agreement where the algae photosynthesize and share nutrients, while the coral provides sanctuary. Even among filter feeders, delicate webs of bacteria assist in digestion and waste breakdown, quietly maintaining the health of their watery world. Such connections echo through human lives. True happiness seldom blooms in isolation. It thrives in the silent alliances we forge, with friends, loved ones, mentors, or even brief, unexpected kindnesses from strangers. The Ordovician seas murmur a truth we often forget, that we rise strongest not alone, but held up by countless gentle bonds. The rise of filter feeders. As the seas teemed with life, filter feeders flourished. Crinoids swayed like underwater flowers, their feathery arms ever open to the nutrient-rich waters. Brachiopods anchored to rock faces in gentle clusters, their shells opening and closing with each tide. Bivalves buried themselves within the soft sand, unseen but essential. Their role was profound. By removing detritus and filtering plankton, they cleared the water, allowing light to reach deeper, nourishing corals and algae alike. In their quiet labor, they sustained balance, an act of constant, tireless care. Much like the unnoticed souls who quietly tend to the well-being of families and communities, these filter feeders remind us that not all heroes are visible. Some heal with gentle words, others by simply being present. In every era, it is those who ease life's turbulence that keep the waters of the world clear. The Ordovician's gentle caretakers still hum that wisdom beneath the waves. A web of silent connections. Piece by piece, the Ordovician seas knit themselves into an intricate, invisible web. Food chains linked predator to prey, symbiotic bonds cradled life in unlikely partnerships, and currents carried both danger and sustenance in equal measure. Together, these threads formed one of Earth's first stable ecosystems. No creature existed in isolation. The actions of a single brachiopod, opening its shell, filtering water, or hosting a microbe rippled outward. Every act mattered. Every life form was a note in the ancient song of life. And so it is for us. The grand tapestry of human existence is woven not from grand gestures, but from everyday moments, kindnesses, decisions, unnoticed deeds. The lesson of these ancient oceans reminds us, in unity, there is resilience. In connection, there is survival. The ancient lesson of equilibrium. As the Ordovician period deepened, its seas perfected a delicate equilibrium. The diversity of life, its endless connections, and the silent agreements between species maintained a world both wild and balanced. The sea's pulse slowed, its communities grew steady. This ancient balance whispers an ageless lesson, that peace is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of harmony. It teaches us to embrace life's opposing forces, to accept both joy and sorrow, to find poise amidst chaos. As night falls and you drift towards sleep, let the memory of these ancient oceans comfort you. Imagine yourself among them, a crinoid swaying in a gentle tide, a quiet filter feeder anchoring steady amidst unseen currents. Know that you, too, belong to a web of silent connections, vital and enduring, part of a rhythm older than stars. Part 2: Fish and the First Vertebrates. 1. The emergence of armored fish. A new shape in the shadows. Beneath the deepening currents of the Ordovician seas, a new shape drifted into being. Amid the swaying forests of crinoids and the scattered colonies of brachiopods, peculiar silhouettes began to appear, shapes encased in plates of hard, bone-like armor. These were the earliest armored fish, known to us as ostracoderms. They did not resemble the sleek fish of today, but bore heads encased in thick shields of horn-like material. Their bodies, soft and limbless, tapered into slender tails that propelled them with gentle undulations. In a world of soft-bodied invertebrates and lurking arthropods, these armored beings were a bold new experiment in nature's endless design. And so, in the unseen depths, these silent pioneers roamed. Their presence reminds us that in the darkest, most overlooked corners, life often dares to be different. Just as the armored fish braved a world unready for them, we too grow strongest when we rise from shadowed places, carrying the armor forged by our struggles. The marvel of bone and cartilage. The armored fish introduced a revolutionary innovation: an internal skeleton of cartilage paired with external plates of solid armor. This dual structure granted them both flexibility and protection, a rare balance in those early days of evolution. The cartilage, light and pliable, supported their bodies without the weight of bone, allowing them to move gracefully through the dense waters. Meanwhile, the thick external shields defended their vulnerable heads and organs from predators. It was an evolutionary compromise, marrying strength with suppleness. We see reflections of this in our own lives. Every person carries unseen armor, formed from trials faced and wounds healed. Yet within, we remain soft and feeling. The armored fish teaches us that true resilience lies in knowing when to shield oneself and when to remain open to the world. Ways to thrive in ancient seas. Survival in the Ordovician was a delicate dance. Armored fish adapted not only by shielding themselves but by mastering varied survival strategies. Some became scavengers, feeding on detritus and decaying matter along the seafloor. Others preyed on small, slow-moving invertebrates. Their armored heads served as plows, digging through sediment to uncover hidden morsels. Their simple, jawless mouths formed gentle suction, drawing in food with the currents. And when larger predators approached, their armor turned them into living fortresses, allowing them to endure where softer creatures fell. So it is with us. Strength is not merely in force, but in adaptability. The armored fish endured by embracing their limitations, turning them into strengths. In life's unyielding currents, those who learn to bend, burrow, and quietly endure are often those who last the longest. The first vertebrate's role in the food chain. The appearance of armored fish redefined the Ordovician food web. Though modest in size, they introduced a new layer of complexity. As both predator and prey, they wove new strands into the ancient chain. Their sturdy bodies made them difficult targets for many hunters, while their scavenging habits cleaned the seafloor. They occupied an ecological space between soft-bodied grazers and agile arthropod predators, bridging the gap between simple and advanced life forms. In our own lives, we too occupy roles both humble and profound, sometimes leading, sometimes following, sometimes nourishing others through quiet acts unseen. The armored fish reminds us that value lies not in dominance, but in connection, in how we link to the lives around us. Evolution's quiet architects. Though they left few direct descendants, armored fish laid the groundwork for future vertebrates. Their internal skeletons and protective shields would echo through time, refining into the bones and structures of modern fish, amphibians, and mammals. Each innovation, each risk they embodied, became a step in evolution's long, patient journey. Their story whispers a truth often forgotten, that our small, quiet choices ripple outward, shaping futures we'll never see. Lessons from armored pioneers. At last, as the Ordovician seas thickened with life, the armored fish stood as symbols of resilience and boldness. They embraced difference, wore their burdens as shields, and carved out places for themselves in a world unprepared for them. Their legacy teaches us to honor what sets us apart, to wear our armor proudly when we must, but to know it needn't define us. For within every toughened shell lies something tender, a spirit not diminished by struggle, but strengthened by it. The challenge of mobility and limitations. Though their armor provided unmatched protection, it came with a cost. The weight and bulk of their bony shields slowed their movements, forcing them to adopt a lifestyle of careful, deliberate action. They often hugged the seafloor or lingered near rocky shelters, trading speed for safety. This trade-off reflects a timeless truth. Limitations are not failures. They are boundaries within which new strengths are forged. The armored fish teach us that slowing down, retreating, or choosing safer paths is not weakness. It's wisdom. Silent ancestors in the current. Though the armored fish have long since vanished from our oceans, their legacy endures in the bones of every vertebrate. Their quiet resilience, their willingness to be different, and their patient mastery of a challenging world laid the foundation for countless generations to come. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine these ancient pioneers gliding through the dark waters, their bodies gleaming with ancient armor. Let their story remind you that even the most unassuming lives can leave ripples felt through eternity. In every silent act of courage, you too become part of the great, enduring current of life. 2. The role of early vertebrates. A new rivalry beneath the waves. In the deep Ordovician seas, a quiet but profound shift began. As armored fish ventured further into ancient shallows and open waters, they encountered new rivals. The soft-bodied arthropods and mollusks that had long dominated these ecosystems. For the first time in Earth's history, vertebrates and invertebrates directly competed for the same resources. The armored fish scavenged the seafloor and preyed upon slow-moving invertebrates, their heavy shields protecting them from retaliation. This growing rivalry subtly reshaped the ecosystem's delicate balance. Food sources became scarcer, forcing both groups to adapt and specialize. In those ancient tides, competition was neither cruel nor kind. It was simply life. This reminds us that rivalry in our own lives often pushes us beyond complacency. It sharpens instincts, inspires ingenuity, and reminds us that challenges are the forge in which resilience is made. The unseen tension of survival. As armored fish spread, their mere presence sent ripples through Ordovician food webs. Soft-bodied creatures that once roamed freely found themselves hunted by beings wrapped in bone and horn. Nautiloids, once apex predators, now faced a new contender capable of defending itself. Tension mounted in every crevice and current. Some invertebrates developed tougher shells or burrowed deeper into the sediment, while armored fish refined their scavenging techniques and began exploiting new food sources. This unseen war beneath the waves was not one of sound or fury, but of careful adjustment. A reminder that even silent struggles have the power to reshape worlds. The bridge between past and future. Early vertebrates, though modest in appearance, played a monumental role in the story of life. They bridged the gap between the simple-bodied life forms of the Cambrian and the increasingly complex beings of future eras. Their presence tested ecosystems, forcing prey and predator alike to adapt to this new kind of opponent. These creatures carried the first hints of what would become jaws, bones, and advanced sensory systems. Every armored fish that scoured the seabed or hovered in still waters represented a link in a chain stretching millions of years forward. In this way, they remind us that every small, quiet effort today can lay the foundation for greatness tomorrow. Early vertebrates reshaped the food web. The Ordovician food chain had long revolved around soft-bodied grazers and swift, tentacled predators. But with the rise of armored fish, the dynamic shifted. These vertebrates disrupted established patterns, consuming resources that had once flowed freely to invertebrate species. Their dual role as both predator and prey added complexity to the ecosystem. Smaller creatures adjusted their behavior, while larger predators learned to approach with caution. In time, new species arose in response to these changes, each one fine-tuned to the altered environment. So too in our own lives. A single new influence can unsettle old habits, inviting fresh opportunities and unexpected growth. The evolutionary pressure of competition. Competition is nature's oldest catalyst for change. The armored fish applied this pressure across the seafloor and open waters. Their armored heads and suction mouths became tools not just of survival but of dominance. Invertebrates adapted by developing sturdier shells, faster movement, or shifting their habitats to avoid conflict. Meanwhile, the vertebrates refined their armor, improved their mobility, and experimented with new feeding strategies. This relentless push and pull spurred a cascade of evolutionary advancements. Every adjustment in one group sparked a countermeasure in another, crafting a dance of survival that would continue for millennia, preparing the stage for true bony fish. Though armored fish would eventually fade from dominance, their innovations left a lasting legacy. They pioneered internal skeletons, rudimentary jaw structures, and enhanced sensory systems, features that would later define bony fish. These early vertebrates prepared the stage for creatures with stronger, lighter skeletons, better maneuverability, and greater hunting capabilities. Without their patient experiments in survival, the great fish of the Silurian and Devonian could not have flourished. It's a quiet truth of life that we often build foundations for triumphs we'll never witness, leaving footprints for others to follow. Lessons from ancient rivals. From these ancient conflicts, we learn timeless lessons. Competition can wound, but it also uplifts. Struggle is an invitation to evolve, to discover untapped resilience and hidden potential. The armored fish and their invertebrate rivals remind us that our greatest growth often springs from friction. Each obstacle sharpens our focus. Each setback inspires reinvention. And in every rivalry lies the possibility of forging something entirely new. As you drift to sleep tonight, let the memory of those ancient, armored swimmers accompany you, bold, silent, and unyielding, as they etched new paths through ancient waters. Their courage in the face of change mirrors our own, in lives equally shaped by tides of unseen struggle and quiet determination. 3 new forms of benthic life. The hidden world beneath the sand. Far beneath the restless Ordovician waves, where sunlight barely pierced the water's surface and silence reigned supreme, life thrived in secret. The seafloor was a realm of shadows, scattered with ancient corals and littered with the discarded shells of creatures long gone. In this dim and ancient world, tiny organisms moved between grains of sand, weaving intricate, unseen networks of life. It was a domain overlooked by the towering nautiloids and armored fish, yet it quietly shaped the future of the oceans. Microorganisms, worms, early arthropods, and simple filter feeders claimed their place here, creating a delicate foundation upon which the greater ecosystems relied. In every grain of sand lay a secret, in every ripple a hidden story, and in every breath of water the heartbeat of an ancient world. As you listen, picture yourself walking barefoot along a beach at dusk, feeling the ancient pulse of the earth through the cool, damp ground beneath you. Even in places unseen and uncelebrated, life beats steady and unbroken. A reminder that the most powerful currents of existence often flow where few would think to look. The rise of parasitic creatures. Among the most curious and quietly influential of these new life forms were the parasitic creatures. Tiny, persistent, and often overlooked, they made their homes upon the bodies of larger organisms. Some clung to the soft, waving arms of crinoids, siphoning away nutrients as their hosts fed. Others burrowed into the protective shells of mollusks or latched onto the armored plates of early fish, siphoning strength and vitality from those who seemed invincible. Parasitism, while seemingly cruel, played a crucial role in maintaining balance within the ecosystem. By weakening the strong and recycling their energy, these creatures ensured that no single species would overwhelm the delicate equilibrium of the ancient seas. Every parasite was a quiet reminder that dominance is fleeting, and even the mightiest can be touched by unseen forces. In the quiet corners of our own lives, too, we encounter relationships that challenge and humble us. Some people pass through, leaving us changed, teaching lessons of resilience and humility, just as those tiny Ordovician parasites shaped the destinies of creatures far larger than themselves. Small predators in a vast world. Life at the bottom of the sea was not without its hunters. Small predatory worms, ancient arthropods, and agile bivalves stalked the seafloor with patient intent. Their hunts were swift and silent, a flicker of movement in the shadows, a cloud of disturbed silt marking a life taken. These modest predators played a vital role in maintaining ecological order, preventing overpopulation and keeping the ecosystem's pulse steady. Their prey were the weak, the slow, the unguarded, ensuring that strength and adaptability continued to define survival beneath the waves. Though their lives and battles often went unnoticed by the colossal creatures above, the small hunters were indispensable threads in the tapestry of Ordovician life. In the quiet corners of our world today, small acts and decisions ripple outward, shaping worlds unseen, a testament to the power of quiet, unseen forces. The silent architects, microbial mats. Perhaps the most vital yet overlooked residents of the Ordovician seafloor were the microbial mats, dense, living carpets of bacteria and algae that clung to rocks and sediment. These microbial communities trapped nutrients, stabilized sediment, and created microhabitats for countless other species. They quietly held the world together. In their humble way, microbial mats were the architects of stability, nurturing fledgling life and offering safe harbor in a world of shifting currents and predatory threats. By holding the seafloor in place, filtering the waters, and seeding the food chain, they allowed diversity to flourish in ways both subtle and profound. In our own lives, unseen kindnesses and quiet labors often form the foundation upon which greater things are built. The silent efforts of those around us, rarely praised, often unnoticed, create the conditions for hope, resilience, and growth. Symbiosis in the shadows. Amid the darkness and shifting sands, surprising partnerships began to bloom. Parasitic creatures and their hosts, filter feeders and symbiotic bacteria, scavengers, and decomposing mats. All formed intricate relationships of mutual benefit or uneasy tolerance. These unlikely bonds ensured survival in a harsh and ever-changing world. Some parasites moderated their demands to keep their hosts alive, while scavengers flourished in the presence of microbial mats that softened sediment and released nutrients. Filter feeders partnered with bacteria that helped them digest otherwise inaccessible material. These quiet alliances remind us even now that connection, however improbable or uncelebrated, sustains us through the deepest of darkness. Our own lives are stitched together by invisible threads of support, forged in unexpected places and unlooked-for friendships. The birth of microecosystems. Each patch of microbial mat, every rocky crevice, and every sheltered hollow became its own tiny world. Within these confined spaces, complex chains of predator and prey, parasite and host, decomposer and consumer unfolded in perpetual cycles. A single grain of sand might shelter hundreds of lives, each one dependent on the others for food, protection, and survival. These microecosystems, though minuscule in scale, mirrored the larger world above and around them, reflecting the same patterns of interdependence and resilience. They taught a vital lesson. Significance is not measured by size or notoriety, but by the lives we touch and sustain. Even the smallest spaces, overlooked and humble, can house infinite wonders. Evolution's experiments in the mud. The seafloor became a vast laboratory for nature's boldest experiments. New forms of parasitism emerged. Creatures learned to burrow, to camouflage, to mimic and deceive. Unseen microbes forged biochemical pathways that would echo in the oceans for millions of years to come. Each mutation, each fleeting encounter, and each survival tactic shaped the future. In places no eye would see, life tested its possibilities, forging strange alliances and odd physiologies that opened doors to new ways of being. We too are shaped in moments unnoticed by the world, in quiet decisions made at midnight, in unseen struggles weathered in solitude, in fleeting acts of kindness left unrecorded. In the shadows, both ancient and modern, life finds ways to evolve. The quiet foundation of future seas. Though the armored fish and nautiloids commanded the attention of ancient seas, it was the benthic life, the world of bottom dwellers, that silently built the stage for marine worlds to come. Their patient labor stabilized the seafloor, filtered waters, and seeded biodiversity. Without them, the great dramas of Ordovician life could not have played out. The towering reefs, the swarming schools, the evolutionary races towards strength and speed, all depended on the quiet, enduring labor of the unseen. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine those ancient sands stirring with unseen life, a hidden world that cradled the ocean's future. Remember that strength often lies not in the loudest voice or brightest star, but in what endures quietly, in what gives without acclaim, and in what makes possible the triumphs of others. And so, as the tides of time moved on, these humble architects laid the groundwork for new empires of life, their legacy etched in the stones beneath our feet and the salt in our veins. Their lessons endure, teaching us that true power often comes not from dominion but from patient, persistent care for the unseen foundations of the world. Part 3. Plants begin to emerge on land. 1. The brave pioneers of the shoreline. Long before trees raised their canopies to the sky and meadows rippled with grasses, the shorelines of ancient Earth were barren, lifeless stretches of rock and sand. The land was a harsh, unforgiving place, scorched by the unfiltered sun and lashed by merciless winds. Waves crashed relentlessly against stone, leaving behind salt spray and shallow, brackish pools. It was into this inhospitable world that life first reached out from the sea, not with boldness, but with quiet persistence. Imagine the misty dawn of a world more than 470 million years ago. In the pale light of early day, delicate green threads clung to the damp surfaces of coastal rocks. These were the algae, the earliest pioneers of the shoreline. They crept from the safety of the water's embrace to brave the uncertain world of land. With no shelter and few nutrients, these fragile organisms stood against the odds, their soft filaments shimmering in the morning mist. These pioneering algae were modest in appearance but monumental in importance. In those slender green strands, life whispered its first promise to the land. Each cluster of algae was a living declaration that the barren world above the tide line could, one day, host life. They claimed no dominion, asked for no reward. They simply existed, and in doing so, forever altered the destiny of the planet. The story of these brave green strands reminds us that every bold step begins humbly. Change is not always loud or swift. Sometimes it is a quiet, persistent reaching, a hopeful clinging to bare stone and empty space. In the simplest of beginnings lies the seed of unimaginable futures, the power of ancient photosynthesis. As these green pioneers crept onto the rocky shores, they carried with them an ancient and powerful gift, photosynthesis. Long practiced beneath the waves, this miraculous process enabled the algae to capture the sun's relentless energy and transform it into sustenance. Through delicate, sunlit reactions within their chlorophyll-rich cells, they forged sugars and oxygen from water and air. Though the algae's reach was modest, their impact rippled far beyond their tiny forms. Each time a fragile green thread absorbed sunlight and released a breath of oxygen, the composition of the young atmosphere changed. Slowly, imperceptibly, these humble organisms began to thicken the veil of air that clung to the planet, breathing new life into a world where the very air had long been thin and harsh. Their work was constant, tireless, and invisible to the creatures of the sea. Yet it was essential. Every moment of photosynthesis strengthened the fragile barrier between Earth and the unfiltered radiation of space. With each breath of oxygen they exhaled, these algae paved the way for future life to one day follow them onto land. In their simple, unhurried existence, they taught a lesson still true for us: that steady, quiet effort can reshape even the most forbidding landscapes. Theirs was a patient labor, a whisper of green against a world of stone, a reminder that no matter how small one's beginning, the light we gather and share can change the sky itself. Life in a harsh new world. The shores these algae claimed were places of hardship. There was no soil to soften their grip, no shade to shelter them from the brutal sun. The air was thin, dry, and unfiltered, and the ground burned hot under the midday glare. When tides withdrew, pools of brackish water evaporated quickly, leaving salty crusts behind. Survival demanded adaptation. Some algae thickened their outer layers, forming gelatinous coatings that trapped precious moisture. Others shrank into tight clusters, clinging to crevices where shadows lingered a little longer. They learned to endure exposure, to dry and rehydrate with the tides, and to bask in the brief mists of dawn. This harsh world sculpted resilience into their very being. Each adaptation was a response to the relentless challenges of life at the water's edge. Over time, their numbers grew, their forms diversified, and the once barren shorelines shimmered with scattered mats of green. They were the first to prove that land, though cruel, could be tamed by persistence. Their story mirrors our own in the times we find ourselves in barren places, exposed and uncertain. Like those ancient algae, we too learn to endure, to gather strength in small, sheltered spaces, and to trust that with each dawn, life will find a way. Primitive roots, the first anchors. As these hardy algae continue to inch their way across the treacherous shorelines, a critical development began to emerge, the formation of primitive anchoring structures. Though they lacked the true roots that later plants would evolve, these algae extended thin, hair-like filaments known as rhizoids. These simple threads reached down into the narrow cracks of stone and grains of wet sand, securing the algae against the ceaseless pull of waves and the harshness of the open air. These primitive roots performed a dual role. Not only did they hold the algae in place, but they also absorbed minute quantities of water and dissolved minerals from their immediate surroundings. It was a modest nourishment, enough to sustain their simple lives and fuel their quiet expansion. Over time, these anchoring networks wove delicate tapestries across the stone, creating the earliest microecosystems on land. In these humble beginnings, we see a reflection of resilience. Like these early algae, when we root ourselves, whether in our beliefs, relationships, or quiet places of peace, we gain the strength to endure life's unrelenting tides. These ancient pioneers teach us that even the simplest anchors can tether us through the harshest storms, allowing us to cling to possibility where others see only barren stone. Creating green micro-oases. As the algae continued to spread across the harsh coastline, something remarkable began to happen. Clusters of these simple organisms started forming vibrant green patches, tiny micro-oases where life could begin to take hold. These mats of algae softened the barren appearance of rock and sand, creating sheltered zones where moisture lingered just a little longer and where the relentless sun was briefly diffused by a shimmer of green. Within these green havens, new possibilities emerged. Tiny microorganisms found refuge within the algal mats, feeding on organic material and contributing their own subtle changes to the primitive environment. Simple nutrients concentrated in these pockets, and conditions for early soil formation quietly took shape. Even as the larger world remained unwelcoming, these patches hinted at the potential of a future where land itself might one day support sprawling ecosystems. A fragile exchange of elements. In these early algal micro-oases, a delicate and essential exchange began to unfold. The algae captured sunlight and carbon dioxide, producing oxygen that slowly transformed the primitive air. Meanwhile, microorganisms within the mats broke down organic matter, recycling nutrients and enriching the scant resources of the shoreline. This fragile, mutual cycle sustained the algae and their companions, forging the planet's earliest ecological partnerships. Over countless seasons, these exchanges laid the biochemical foundation for the land ecosystems that would one day follow. It was a lesson in gentle cooperation, an ancient whisper that no life truly thrives alone, preparing the land for future forests. Over generations, these micro-oases did more than sustain themselves. They began subtly transforming the landscape. The mats of algae trapped wind-blown dust and fine particles of sediment, gradually building thin, dark layers of organic-rich material atop the rock. Though primitive, these early soils marked the first step in rendering the land hospitable to more complex life. The enriched pockets retained moisture more effectively, fostering new waves of microbial colonizers. Each generation of algae and microorganisms contributed to the slow but steady improvement of the environment. Over millennia, these patient efforts laid the groundwork for the arrival of more sophisticated plant life, setting the stage for the first true terrestrial ecosystems. A timeless lesson in quiet persistence. The journey of these pioneering algae stands as one of nature's most profound lessons in quiet persistence. Against overwhelming odds, they ventured beyond their ancestral waters, braved the unkind embrace of dry land, and sowed the seeds of life upon bare stone. Their story echoes through time to our present moment. It reminds us that even in the harshest conditions, resilience takes root. That small, consistent acts of courage and care can reshape entire worlds. And that no matter how humble our beginnings, each step we take toward the unknown carries the promise of futures not yet imagined. In the algae's patient greening of ancient shorelines, we find a gentle wisdom that life, like hope, is irrepressible, and with enough time and quiet persistence, it will find a way. 2. Small-stemmed plants. A new shape rises from the shoreline. In the quiet lull after the Ordovician seas withdrew from the land, something remarkable began to stir. Along the edges of rocky shores and the damp hollows where mist lingered, the first upright plants took tentative root. These were no towering trees or lush meadows, but humble, slender stalks. Small-stemmed pioneers standing as green sentinels against a world of stone and wind. Their arrival marked a profound turning point in Earth's story. For the first time, life was reaching upward, claiming the dry world not with force, but with quiet insistence. Each delicate stem was a declaration that the land, long barren, would one day teem with life. As you imagine those early sprouts swaying in ancient breezes, picture them as the earliest dreamers, believing in a future only they could see. Primitive vascular tissues, the first green vessels. These early plants bore within them a crucial innovation: primitive vascular tissues. While rudimentary compared to the intricate networks in modern trees, these simple tubes carried water and dissolved minerals from root to tip. It was an elegant solution to a harsh environment, where rain fell unpredictably and the sun's heat threatened to desiccate all but the hardiest. The vascular tissues worked tirelessly, channeling life-giving moisture through narrow vessels to nourish every fragile cell. In these slender threads of water, the plants found strength, standing taller and reaching farther than any had before. This quiet evolution set the stage for forests yet to come, a subtle promise written in green against the stony earth. The art of water storage. Survival on land demanded more than just reaching for the sky. It required mastering the scarcity of water. These pioneering plants developed modest yet effective methods for conserving moisture. Their outer layers thickened, forming protective barriers against the relentless sun. Some cells expanded into storage chambers, hoarding precious drops of dew and rain. Short, shallow roots fanned across the soil, drawing moisture from the surface and clinging to the damp earth after every misty dawn. In these adaptations, life demonstrated its capacity for resilience. The plant's ability to store water ensured not only their survival but the gradual transformation of the land itself into a place where life could endure. Primitive reproductive wonders. Without flowers or seeds, these ancient plants relied on more elemental forms of reproduction. They released delicate spores into the wind, tiny green specks adrift on ancient breezes. Some fell upon welcoming soil, sprouting into new life. Others traveled far, seeding distant shores with the promise of future growth. This method, both hopeful and haphazard, reflected the uncertainty of a young world. Yet within every spore was a quiet defiance, a refusal to be confined to the sea or shaded hollows. Like whispered prayers, these spores carried the future on invisible currents, their journeys a testament to life's persistent reach. taming the land, holding the soil together. As their numbers grew, these small plants began to shape the land in unexpected ways. Their slender roots wove through loose soil and shifting sands, anchoring the earth against erosion. They became guardians of stability, holding together the ground where nothing had held it before. In their shade, moisture lingered a little longer. In the shelter of their leaves, wind lost some of its bite. Slowly, imperceptibly, they transformed harsh landscapes into places where life might gather. Their presence forged microhabitats where insects, microbes, and mosses would soon find refuge. The green breath of a young world. Through photosynthesis, these unassuming plants altered the very air. By capturing sunlight and exhaling oxygen, they helped thicken the atmosphere and nurture the early ozone layer, shielding Earth from harmful radiation. Each slender stalk became a silent engine of change, contributing to a world where future generations could thrive. Their work was invisible to the towering nautiloids and ancient fish of the seas, but it shaped the future as surely as any grand upheaval. Every breath of air you take today carries a trace of their ancient exhalations, a quiet legacy of the green pioneers. The birth of microhabitats. Where these plants clustered, tiny ecosystems flourished. Pockets of shade preserved dew. Damp soil beneath leaves cradled insect larvae and minute crustaceans. Even the rough surfaces of their stems provided perches for mosses and homes for microbes. In these modest refuges, the complexity of terrestrial life began to bloom. Each microhabitat was a seed of possibility, a promise that land need not be barren. These scattered enclaves of life taught a valuable lesson. That transformation begins in small, persistent acts. The ancient lesson of quiet persistence. The story of small-stemmed plants is not one of sudden conquest, but of steady, unyielding presence. Through drought and storm, they clung to their patches of earth. Though fragile and often overlooked, they laid the groundwork for forests, fields, and flowering meadows. Their legacy endures not only in the towering trees of modern times, but in the principle they embodied. That change need not be loud to be profound. In our own lives, too, it is often the quiet efforts, the small kindnesses, and the patient hopes that shape the world we leave behind. And so, as night falls and the earth slumbers, remember the green threads that first claimed the land, and the silent, stubborn pulse of life that still beats in every leaf and blade of grass. 3. The influence on early ecosystems. Holding the soil, the quiet guardians. In the earliest days of land colonization, the pioneering mats of algae played a role far beyond simply existing. As waves lapped against rocky shores and tides withdrew, these delicate green carpets clung to every crack and crevice. In doing so, they trapped tiny grains of sand, dust, and mineral fragments that would have otherwise been swept away by water and wind. This quiet, uncelebrated labor formed the first primitive soils of Earth. Every tide left behind scattered debris, and with each passing season, these fragile algae mats thickened. The gradual accumulation of sediment within their embrace stabilized the land, holding it firmly against the constant assault of erosion. It was a slow, silent defiance against nature's brute forces. With every grain retained, they prepared the ground for future life. Like unseen caretakers, they quietly built the stage upon which the next chapters of life's story would unfold. Their persistence reminds us of those in our own lives who protect and nurture without seeking recognition. The friend who steadies us, the neighbor who tends forgotten spaces, or the parent who quietly bears the weight of unseen responsibilities. These gentle guardians make our world livable in ways we rarely notice but deeply rely upon. Gentle protectors of the shore. As algae mats thickened, they created not only soil but also natural buffers against the relentless force of moving water. Rain would fall, and rather than rushing unchecked across the barren rock, its flow was slowed by these dense, spongy thickets. The water lingered, pooling briefly in the shaded crevices, offering moisture to the fragile ecosystem. These primitive green communities formed the earliest forms of shore stabilization. Their humble presence softened the landscape, making it less prone to erosion and more hospitable to other pioneering organisms. The mats held precious water where none could have lingered before, creating microhabitats that supported the earliest terrestrial microorganisms. As tides swept across ancient coastlines, these mats dampened their force, reducing soil loss and nurturing a mosaic of tiny, life-filled refuges. Each ripple slowed by the algae's embrace allowed countless microorganisms and early plants to settle, germinate, and find a fragile foothold. These mats didn't just save soil, they seeded possibility. Their work, though simple, was profound, much like those people who, without fanfare, ease the burdens of others and steady life's uncertainties. They remind us that protection need not be loud or forceful. Often, it is gentle, constant, and quietly indispensable. It is in these understated acts of shelter that resilience is quietly born. The silent rise of oxygen. While algae softened the land and steadied the soil, another miracle unfolded quietly: the release of oxygen. Through photosynthesis, these unassuming organisms transform sunlight and carbon dioxide into life-giving energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Each delicate breath of oxygen exhaled into the thin Ordovician air thickened the atmosphere's fragile veil. Though its presence was still slight, every molecule of oxygen carried profound consequences. Slowly, the skies changed. The air, once harsh and unyielding, began to support more complex chemical interactions. This invisible revolution would, over countless ages, reshape Earth's environment into a world where land animals could one day breathe. Beneath those ancient skies, invisible waves of oxygen quietly accumulated. Each tiny pulse helped shift the planet's balance, nudging life toward its next threshold. The steady exhalations of the algae forged conditions that would one day cradle forests and support the songs of creatures yet unimagined. It is a gentle reminder that the smallest, most consistent efforts, like kind words, quiet prayers, or acts of care, can over time shape entire realities. Even unseen, these offerings alter the atmosphere of our lives and soften the air we all share, building a breathable world. As generations of algae persisted, the oxygen content of the atmosphere grew. Though still thin compared to modern levels, these incremental changes fostered new opportunities. The earliest terrestrial microbes benefited first, adapting to the presence of trace oxygen in the air and soil. Slowly, tiny life forms expanded into the world once held in dominion by stone and sea alone. This shift marked the beginning of a breathable world. It laid the groundwork for all future land life: plants, insects, and much later, the first land-dwelling animals. The algae's labor, though uncelebrated in its time, shaped the fate of every generation that followed. Imagine the first whispers of fresh air brushing over bare rock, carrying hints of a future not yet born. These modest changes rewrote the rules of life's possibilities, making room for diversity to bloom. It was a breath offered in faith without expectation, and yet it would carry life forward. There's wisdom in knowing that much of what we do today may seem insignificant but will one day matter deeply to those who come after. Our words, our efforts, our kindness, invisible in the present, invaluable in the future, enriching the nutrient cycle. Beneath the tangled mats of green, an intricate exchange unfolded. Organic matter accumulated as algae lived, died, and decayed. This decaying plant matter mixed with mineral grains, forming the earliest rudimentary soils. Microorganisms thrived in this nutrient-rich matrix, breaking down detritus and releasing essential elements back into the environment. This cycling of nutrients established the earliest feedback loops between life and land. Nutrients were trapped, stored, and released in delicate cycles that steadily enriched the barren world. It was the first step toward a sustainable, self-supporting terrestrial environment. Layers of life and death created a nourishing foundation, one fragment at a time. In the humble cycle of decay and rebirth, nature began scripting its endless story of renewal. Each grain of soil carried traces of life lived and lives to come, a fertile promise cradled in Earth's palm. It reminds us that when we give freely of ourselves, sharing wisdom, offering kindness, or extending compassion, we nourish the hidden cycles of life around us. The effects may go unseen, but they persist in ways that matter, rippling through futures we may never witness, preparing a stage for future life. As algae continued their tireless work, the land itself began to change. The rough, lifeless crust gave way to scattered patches of organic-rich earth. These early soils retained moisture more effectively, softened the land's appearance, and supported increasingly complex microbial communities. Each successive generation of algae and microorganisms subtly improved the conditions of the shore. Through their combined labor, the land became a little less hostile, a little more welcoming to the next pioneers. They prepared a stage upon which mosses, ferns, and eventually forests would one day stand. Imagine those early patches of green softened soil gleaming under ancient sunlight, the first glimmers of a terrestrial world in the making. Their quiet perseverance built sanctuaries for future seeds to settle, for roots to take hold, and for forests to rise from dust. Their story teaches us the power of laying foundations. We may never see the trees that will grow from the seeds we plant, but by tending to the soil of our lives and relationships, we prepare a better world for others. A legacy of resilience and care. The mats of ancient algae left behind more than soil and oxygen. They wove resilience into the fabric of early ecosystems. By stabilizing shores, enriching soils, and reshaping the atmosphere, they created the conditions necessary for future life to flourish. This legacy reminds us of the enduring power of quiet, patient care. Just as algae transformed a hostile world, our simple, steady acts of kindness and courage can turn barren seasons into fertile ground for growth. The work may be unseen and its fruits delayed, but its value endures. Their green threads stitch together a tapestry of life's beginnings, setting the stage for every creature to follow. In their story, we find a lesson in resilience. That gentle, persistent tending can soften even the harshest lands, and that hope, once sown, always seeks a place to grow. In these ancient green threads, we find an invitation to be caretakers of our environments, protectors of hope, and gentle guardians of the lives around us. Like those pioneering algae, we are called to leave the world kinder and more welcoming for those yet to come. Part 4. The Endordovician Extinction Event. 1. The triggers of climate change. The calm before the storm. The Ordovician world was a thriving tapestry of life, woven from corals, trilobites, and ancient cephalopods gliding through clear, shallow seas. The warmth of the sun lingered on waves that cradled vast reefs, while diverse marine ecosystems flourished in harmony. Gentle currents carried nutrients and plankton through the water columns, nourishing creatures great and small. Above, the skies glimmered in hues of pale azure, and beneath the gentle sway of water, forests of crinoids waved like underwater meadows. Vast reefs stretched as far as the eye could see, shimmering with colors that, in time, no human eye would ever witness. Life seemed timeless. The ancient seas hummed a quiet, continuous song, a lullaby of life's steady, eternal rhythm. Yet, beneath this peaceful facade, slow and silent changes stirred. Just as the steady ticking of a clock foreshadows the inevitable chime, the planet quietly prepared for one of its earliest great trials. The pulse of the Earth, steady and unnoticed, began to shift. It is often in our calmest moments that life's turning points begin, unnoticed. A single whispered thought, an unseen shift in tide, or a cooling breeze unnoticed on the cheek. So too, Earth's fate turned upon such gentle beginnings. And like us, nature too holds its breath before a storm, when the surface seems still but the deeper currents already move. The world did not know yet, but within the hush of that ancient calm, the first stirrings of change had begun. A subtle cooling begins. At first, the changes were imperceptible. Slight alterations in the planet's orbit subtly shifted how much sunlight reached different parts of the world. The Gondwana supercontinent began its slow, inevitable drift toward the South Pole, darkening skies above and cooling the Earth below. Carbon dioxide levels, long a blanket warming the world, began to drop. Volcanoes, once benevolent providers of land and minerals, erupted with ash and gases that dimmed the sunlight. The oceans, once basking in consistent warmth, grew cooler. Subtle currents shifted, carrying colder water from the poles to equatorial regions, disrupting the balance that had cradled life for millions of years. What began as a soft sigh across the world's waters marked the first breath of a coming ice age. In our lives, too, quiet changes often precede great transformations. The hush before a farewell, the first chill of a turning season. Small portents, unseen until their meaning becomes clear. Life, sensitive to every nuance of its environment, responded with hesitation. Coral polyps, accustomed to balmy currents, withdrew into their stony homes a little earlier each dusk. Phytoplankton blooms faltered, their emerald clouds growing thinner, leaving the water a shade more transparent and a touch less nurturing. Though still vibrant, the world's pulse slowed, imperceptibly, but undeniably. The world turns to ice. As temperatures fell, polar ice sheets formed, expanding steadily across Gondwana. Gigantic glaciers gathered, locking away immense volumes of seawater. Global sea levels began to fall, exposing once submerged continental shelves. Rich coral reefs and shallow marine nurseries, lifelines for countless species, found themselves stranded, their vibrant communities left to wither in the absence of supportive waters. What was once a vast, unbroken marine world fractured. Tides receded from familiar shores. Life clung to what little remained, while the encroaching cold remade coastlines into barren expanses. Ice reshaped valleys and carved new rivers, while wind swept across exposed plains of mud and stone. Great walls of ice, shimmering under pale suns, marched down from the poles. The world, once so blue and green, gleamed white. It is a poignant echo of how, in our own experiences, Sudden hardship can strip away the familiar, leaving us searching for safe harbors. As the seas withdrew, so too did the warmth from the world. Sheltered bays and deep ocean trenches became sanctuaries for life, offering what little refuge they could from the tightening grip of ice. Collapsing ecosystems. With shrinking habitats came cascading losses. Shelled brachiopods, trilobites, and early mollusks perished as their environments vanished. Entire food chains unraveled. Filter feeders lacked plankton-rich waters. Predators starved as prey grew scarce. The rich tapestry of life that had blanketed the Ordovician seas thinned, thread by thread. Coral reefs, once bustling cities beneath the waves, became ghostly ruins. Crinoids, their feathered arms once waving in gentle currents, stood brittle and lifeless. Nautiloids drifted through emptier waters, their tentacles sensing for prey that had vanished. Communities that had persisted for millions of years disbanded in mere centuries. This disintegration of ecosystems reminds us of the fragile interconnections in nature and in our lives. Just as one lost species can trigger the fall of many, so too can a single disrupted relationship send ripples through a family, a community, a soul. In each vanishing creature was the end of an ancient lineage, a final breath exhaled into cold, empty waters. And yet, even then, small survivors clung to the edges, defiant against the growing void. The great dying, the extinction came in waves. Initial losses struck shallow water species, followed by deep water communities as cooling and oxygen depletion worsened. It was a relentless attrition that erased nearly 85% of marine species, life's first great reckoning. The oceans grew quieter, emptier. Coral reefs lay in ruins, their once colorful inhabitants gone. Those species able to adapt to colder, darker, and more isolated refuges endured, while others vanished into memory. Ghost forests of dead crinoids littered the seafloor. Trilobite shells piled in ancient graveyards, relics of a world now gone. This mass extinction, while devastating, would in time clear space for new life forms to emerge, as every ending secretly plants the seed for a new beginning. Even as darkness fell, the promise of life's resilience shimmered faintly beneath the surface. Nature, though wounded, waited, nature's silent renewal. Even as devastation spread, pockets of resilience persisted. Hardy species clung to life in scattered enclaves. Deep trenches, sheltered coves, and frigid waters that slowed decay. From these remnants, evolution would one day rebuild. Life's stubborn spark, though diminished, refused to be extinguished. Some small trilobites adapted to the cold, their bodies slowing to match the icy waters. Hardy brachiopods persisted in deep channels where the ice could not reach. Microbial mats quietly spread across barren mudflats, seeding new ecosystems beneath the gaze of pale, frigid suns. It reminds us that even in loss, hope endures. In the darkest seasons of our lives, small kindnesses, enduring relationships, and quiet acts of courage anchor us, preserving the essence of what we may become once the storms pass. Like ancient survivors in frozen refuges, the heart shelters warmth through every long night. Lessons from a changing world. The late Ordovician extinction reshaped Earth's evolutionary path. Those that survived carried forward new strengths, better adapted to the world reborn in ice and scarcity. The fragile balance of ecosystems had revealed its power, both to sustain and to unravel. In the quiet after such loss, new opportunities eventually stirred. For us, the lesson endures, that change is inevitable, that resilience is cultivated quietly, and that loss, while sorrowful, clears the way for what might yet flourish. Like ancient seas recovering from ice, we too find new life in time, restoring what was lost in forms both familiar and unforeseen. And as the world turned cold and life withdrew, a promise remained, silent but enduring, that after every long winter, spring returns, reshaping the world with gentle, persistent hands. In every closing chapter lies the whisper of the next, and life, always patient, waits for its cue to rise again. 2. The impact on marine life. The silent retreat of the reefs. As the Ordovician seas cooled, the first to suffer were the ancient coral reefs. These vibrant underwater cities had thrived in warm, nutrient-rich shallows, hosting countless species within their labyrinthine structures. But as temperatures dropped and sea levels fell, reefs began to falter. Coral polyps, sensitive to the slightest changes in temperature and salinity, withdrew into their stony homes, ceasing to build and reproduce. The vibrant fish, trilobites, and mollusks that darted among their crevices began to vanish, leaving the reefs eerily quiet. Where once crinoids waved like kelp forests in gentle currents, now skeletal remains clung to bare rocks. The once bustling heart of the marine ecosystem dimmed. It serves as a reminder that even the strongest fortresses in our lives, friendships, families, safe places, can falter when the world around them changes. Yet within each ending lies the seed of something new. The collapse of these reefs disrupted food chains and shelter for countless creatures. Small filter feeders lost their refuges, while predators found their hunting grounds barren. In human terms, it resembles losing the cornerstones of one's life, the safe spaces and supportive communities that uphold us in times of hardship. The silent retreat of the reefs teaches us that even in silence and loss, nature prepares for renewal. Brachiopods and mollusks on the brink. Brachiopods and mollusks, once the most abundant shelled animals on the ocean floor, found themselves cornered. As nutrient flows dwindled and oxygen levels decreased, their populations plummeted. Brachiopods clung stubbornly to submerged stones and outcrops, their shells closing tighter against the increasingly harsh tides. Mollusks, including early bivalves and gastropods, struggled to find food and suitable waters. Some sought refuge in deeper, colder areas, but many perished, their delicate shells settling into the growing graveyards of the seafloor. It mirrors how, in difficult seasons, we too hold tightly to what remains, hoping for a harbor amid the storm. Their decline marks the fragility of ancient ecosystems. These creatures had thrived for millions of years, only to be undone by gradual environmental shifts. In the vast timeline of Earth, even the longest reigns can be fleeting. Their resilience in the face of adversity reflects the quiet determination found in people weathering their own personal winters, waiting for warmth to return. Fish and early vertebrates in crisis. The burgeoning population of armored fish and early vertebrates faced unprecedented challenges. These agile swimmers, once dominant predators and scavengers, found their hunting grounds shrinking. The cooling waters slowed their metabolisms, while prey species vanished. Competition for scarce food intensified. Stronger, faster species pushed out the weak. Only the most adaptable individuals, those capable of seeking refuge in deep or isolated waters, survived. This mirrors our own struggles when faced with sudden hardship. It forces us to adapt, sharpen our instincts, and cling to life's quiet corners. Entire groups of early fish species dwindled, their fossilized remains a silent record of struggle and loss. The crisis highlighted not only the harshness of nature, but also its unsentimental drive toward resilience and renewal. In human life, moments of scarcity reveal who we are, testing the limits of endurance and compassion. As the Ordovician seas thinned of their vertebrate hunters, evolution quietly laid plans for those yet to come. The collapse of the food chain. As primary producers like phytoplankton declined due to colder, darker waters, the entire food web trembled. Filter feeders such as crinoids and brachiopods, once thriving on rich plankton flows, starved. Predators found fewer prey. Trilobites, already weakened by environmental changes, became scarce. The interconnectedness of Ordovician life unraveled. Ecosystems once bustling with a diversity of roles, grazers, filters, hunters, now saw empty niches. A ripple effect spread through the seas, where each lost species removed another thread from nature's tapestry. It reminds us how fragile our own support systems can be, and how vital it is to nurture every connection. The delicate balance sustained for millions of years proved as fleeting as a calm sea before a storm. Modern parallels exist in the collapse of ecosystems or the unraveling of personal relationships under stress. The Ordovician oceans teach us the cost of imbalance, urging us to recognize the worth of every thread in the fabric of our lives. Silent waters, empty seas. The vast shallow seas, once teeming with life, grew silent. Ghostly remains of coral structures rose from barren seafloors. Fields of dead crinoids lay untouched. The only sounds were the soft shift of sediment and the occasional ripple of surviving nautiloids gliding through empty blue. These hauntingly quiet landscapes mirror the emptiness felt in times of profound loss. Yet, in the silence, life's resilience quietly persisted. Microbial mats spread once more across the mudflats. Tiny, overlooked species began to adapt, setting the stage for the future. Even in desolation, hope whispers. There's a poignant beauty in empty spaces, in the quiet aftermath where life once flourished. It mirrors the quiet nights we endure when loss dims our world. Yet somewhere in those shadowed hours, resilience stirs, waiting for its moment to rise, much like ancient species persisting in unseen corners of a changing world. Resilient survivors. Among the wreckage, a few resilient species endured. Hardy trilobites adapted to colder waters. Certain brachiopods survived in deep trenches. Primitive jawless fish, with their slow, deliberate movements, found sanctuary in isolated coves. These survivors would become the ancestors of future life forms. They remind us that in every personal winter, quiet strengths survive. Acts of kindness, steadfast companions, and small victories endure, preserving what matters most until brighter days return. They represent nature's unwillingness to yield completely, no matter how devastating the losses. In human stories, too, survivors become the seeds from which future generations rise. These stubborn life forms, dwelling in icy refuges, embody the truth that beneath every hardship, the promise of renewal lies dormant, waiting to be called forth. The eternal lesson of fragile balance. The extinction reshaped Earth's biological landscape. Entire lineages vanished, while others rose from obscurity. This catastrophic loss restructured food webs, altered ecosystems, and cleared space for new life to flourish. The Ordovician's ancient seas teach us the delicate nature of balance. That life, whether in an ocean or a heart, is interwoven and easily disrupted. And though endings are painful, they create room for new growth. After every tide recedes, it leaves fertile ground behind. It reminds us that neither the earth nor our lives remain static. Seasons turn, tides shift, and from the ruins of one world, another quietly rises. Just as new species would eventually colonize the emptied reefs and silenced seas, we too rebuild after loss. Each vanished creature's absence formed a space where something unexpected might one day thrive. 3. The recovery after extinction. The first brave returners. In the aftermath of devastation, life never fully retreats. Even as vast swaths of Ordovician seas emptied and ecosystems crumbled, the smallest, most unassuming forms of life lingered in the silent places. Microbial mats spread across the desolate seafloors, thin, shimmering films of bacteria and simple algae, resilient and ancient. These humble organisms were the first to brave the chill, settling in tide pools, clinging to submerged stones, and covering muddy flats where nothing else dared remain. Though invisible to the grand theater of larger creatures, these microbial pioneers played a crucial role. They cleaned the water, produced oxygen, and laid the groundwork for future life. It reminds us that in the loneliest, darkest moments, it is often the smallest, most overlooked parts of ourselves. A kind thought, a quiet memory, a simple breath that keep us going. Life, both ancient and modern, begins its return not with a roar, but a whisper. New species rising from silence. In time, the desolation gave way to quiet stirrings. From the depths and isolated shallows, new species emerged. Not the grand trilobites of old or vast coral cities, but modest creatures with sturdy shells, simpler forms, and hardy dispositions. Certain trilobites, adapted to colder and lower oxygen waters, cautiously spread. Tiny brachiopods reappeared, fastening themselves to rocky ledges. Among them, peculiar newcomers arrived. Small gastropods, primitive cephalopods, and crustacean-like scavengers exploring the abandoned seafloors. These life forms, born from catastrophe, learned to thrive in scarcity. They filled empty niches and, over time, diversified. This gradual return mirrors how we, after loss or hardship, rediscover ourselves in modest ways. An unexpected smile, a quiet act of resilience, a new routine taking root in the ruins of the old. Adapting to a cold new world, the Ordovician seas had changed. They were colder, darker, and less forgiving. Yet life has a way of adapting. Creatures that endured the mass extinction adjusted their forms and habits. Brachiopods developed thicker shells to resist chilling currents. Jawless fish slowed their metabolism, conserving energy in nutrient-starved waters. Some trilobites evolved flatter bodies to cling to rocks against stronger tides. Others retreated to deeper trenches, where temperatures remained stable. These adaptations remind us that resilience is not about remaining unchanged, but in bending, shifting, and surviving through transformation. The ancient oceans taught that the harshest winters forged the strongest survivors, not through power, but persistence. Microbial mats, the foundation of new ecosystems. As larger creatures struggled, microbial mats flourished. These thin layers of bacteria and algae stretched across the ocean floor, becoming vibrant tapestries of microscopic life. They oxygenated the water, stabilized sediments, and created patches of livable habitat where tiny invertebrates could gather. In the grand story of Earth, microbial mats have often been the architects of renewal. Their quiet, constant work set the stage for life's resurgence, filtering toxins and nurturing fragile species back to health. It reflects how, in our own lives, humble, unnoticed acts, A word of kindness, a moment of stillness, a quiet strength gradually heal the unseen wounds we carry. Slow but steady biodiversity. Life's return was not immediate. It came in gradual ripples, each new species a thread woven into a mending web. Filter feeders reclaimed their niches. Tiny scavengers reappeared, and slowly, trilobites formed new communities. The oceans did not regain their former richness, but diversity crept back, one species at a time. This measured pace allowed ecosystems to stabilize. Predators returned cautiously, prey grew abundant in isolated patches, and ancient reefs began to host life again. It's a reminder that healing, whether for a planet or a person, rarely arrives in sudden bursts. It's built through quiet, continuous persistence, with patience as its most essential thread. Life finds unexpected niches. In the face of devastation, some life forms discovered new, unclaimed places to thrive. Deep undersea crevices, cold oxygen-starved trenches, and muddy flats became unexpected refuges. Jawless fish glided in the dark, primitive mollusks burrowed in soft sediment, and microbial colonies coated submerged stones. This exploration into forgotten corners reshaped the direction of evolution. Species adapted to extreme conditions, developing traits that would eventually birth entirely new lineages. It reminds us that in hardship, we sometimes find new places within ourselves and the world that were invisible in easier times. Sanctuaries of peace, of resilience, of quiet purpose. The legacy of survival. From the wreckage of extinction rose the resilient few, ancestors of future ages. These hardy survivors, trilobites, brachiopods, early fish, and microbial pioneers, carried forward the threads of life's tapestry. They would seed the Silurian seas, giving rise to new reefs, new predators, and eventually verdant landscapes on land. The Ordovician recovery teaches that no ending is absolute. In every loss lies the seed of rebirth. The Earth's history, like human experience, is a rhythm of ebb and flow, decline and renewal. For every tide that recedes, another quietly gathers. The survival of these species whispers an ancient truth, that after every winter, life finds a way to bloom. Part 5: Ordovician Climate and Geology. 1. The climate of the Ordovician. The early warmth. Earth's embrace. Close your eyes and imagine a world bathed in gentle warmth, where endless oceans shimmer beneath soft, misty skies. In the early Ordovician, the Earth was wrapped in a comforting cloak of heat, its atmosphere thick with carbon dioxide. There was no ice, no harsh winters, only balmy breezes and a planet tenderly cradling its infant biosphere. The oceans covered much of the planet, with scattered island chains and the supercontinent Gondwana drifting in the south. Life thrived in this balmy cradle. Coral reefs expanded, marine creatures multiplied, and currents carried warmth and nutrients across a vibrant underwater world. It was a season of promise, like the early morning of a long summer's day. For a moment in geological time, the Earth seemed content, a mother soothing her child. The tranquility of these ancient seas mirrored moments in our lives when everything feels beautifully still and possibilities bloom quietly in the warmth of gentle days. A blue world beneath pale skies. The skies above were thin and pale, lacking the deep azure we know today. Without a fully formed ozone layer, the sun's light was harsher, its ultraviolet rays stronger. Yet, the vast seas absorbed the heat, distributing it through vast currents that circled the globe. Giant cephalopods and trilobites danced in shallows and open waters alike, while planktonic life painted the seas in hues of green and blue. These gentle tides nourished entire ecosystems. The warmth allowed ancient reefs to flourish and plankton blooms to feed a growing chain of life. Vast mats of microbial life floated in the sunlit layers, harvesting light and creating oxygen. The Earth in these days was a vast, interconnected cradle, with life's first complex stories unfolding beneath soft, endless skies. It reminds us of rare moments in life when peace feels boundless, and the future stretches out like an unbroken horizon. There's a unique serenity in imagining a world where life was simple, primal, and intimately connected with every pulse of the tide. The slow shift toward cold. But like every calm, it would not last forever. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, change crept across the world. Gondwana, that great landmass, began a slow, relentless drift toward the South Pole. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels decreased, perhaps drawn down by the proliferation of photosynthesizing algae and early plants in coastal shallows. These tiny life forms, unseen yet crucial, began to alter the chemistry of the atmosphere, slowly rewriting the planet's fate. The oceans, once uniformly warm, began to cool at the poles. Ice caps, small at first, formed in high southern latitudes. Distant currents altered their courses, carrying colder waters into once temperate zones. Nature whispered of winter's approach, though most life had yet to hear it. This gradual, inevitable transformation reminds us that even the gentlest warmth cannot endure unchanged. Every chapter in life holds its closing lines, written softly at first before the page turns. The first whispers of ice. As more ice gathered, sunlight reflected from brilliant white sheets, accelerating cooling. Sea levels began a slow but steady decline, exposing continental shelves and shallow seabeds once teeming with creatures. Reefs found themselves in shallower, harsher waters, while species accustomed to warmth felt the chill. The great coral gardens that flourished in sunlit shallows struggled, their delicate structures brittle against the encroaching cold. In the darkness of the deep south, glaciers advanced. The ancient oceans grew quieter, currents shifting and losing their warmth. Creatures adapted in small ways, moving to deeper, more stable waters, or developing thicker shells and slower metabolisms. Even the microbial mats adjusted, their pigments deepening to absorb limited light. It was a time of hushed resilience, of life holding its breath before the storm. And within that stillness lay an echo of human experience. How we, too, brace ourselves in quiet for changes we cannot yet name. Changing ocean currents and winds, with ice sheets altering the globe's balance. Ocean currents and wind patterns were thrown into disarray. Some regions became nutrient-rich havens as upwelling currents brought deep, fertile waters to the surface. Elsewhere, warm currents vanished, leaving barren, unproductive seas in their place. The once familiar patterns of tides and winds shifted unpredictably, carrying warmth to unfamiliar places and leaving others in cold isolation. For marine life, this shifting pattern meant feast in some places, famine in others. Some species thrived in new upwelling zones, while others struggled against the encroaching cold. Predators found their hunting grounds altered, and prey species sought refuge in dwindling safe waters. The Ordovician world was becoming a mosaic of shifting fortunes. It echoes life's truth, that nothing remains static and survival belongs to the adaptable. And in this grand story of currents and winds, we're reminded how unseen forces shape the tides of both nature and our lives. The deepening freeze, glaciation intensified, with ice sheets stretching far across Gondwana. Winters lengthened, growing harsher and crueler. Sea levels plunged dramatically, draining vast shallow seas and destroying countless habitats. Coral reefs perished, brachiopods and trilobites dwindled, and entire ecosystems unraveled like frayed tapestries. This was no quick disaster, but a prolonged suffocation. Oxygen levels in deep waters fell. The lush, teeming oceans of early Ordovician days gave way to silence and scarcity. Yet even then, in pockets of calm, life endured. Resilience took root in the strangest corners, in the deep, in the dark, and in the cold. The enduring spirit of survival reminds us that light and life persist even in the deepest winters, that some threads of hope never fully snap. A planet on the brink of silence. By the end of the Ordovician, Earth had transformed. Ice dominated the southern lands, while seas shrank and currents slowed. Entire species vanished, victims of a climate too cruel for their fragile forms. Yet the world itself did not perish. In isolated refuges, survivors clung on. Tiny fish in cold trenches, hardy trilobites in deep mud, and microbial mats beneath frozen shallows. The legacy of Ordovician climate change was not merely extinction but transformation. It reminds us, as dusk does today, that every ending conceals the seed of a new beginning. And so, the Earth waited the hush before the dawn of Silurian seas. In those long frozen nights, the planet held its breath, and somewhere in the dark, the first quiet stirrings of recovery began. Just as in our own winters, when warmth feels distant, life quietly prepares to bloom again. 2. The tectonic movements of the Ordovician. The slow drift of Gondwana. Close your eyes and imagine a colossal landmass, its mountainous ridges and ancient valleys slowly drifting southward across a primeval ocean. Gondwana, one of Earth's earliest supercontinents, began a measured, almost imperceptible migration toward the icy embrace of the South Pole during the Ordovician. It was a journey that would take millions of years, but its consequences rippled across both ocean and atmosphere. As Gondwana moved, it reshaped the face of the ancient world, adjusting currents, climates, and ecosystems with every incremental step. Picture it now, a vast, green wilderness broken by rocky coasts and shallow seas, where primitive plants clung to shorelines and trilobites scurried across sunlit shallows. The movement of Gondwana was gentle, yet unstoppable, much like the changes we encounter in life. At times we hardly notice them, but they alter the entire map of our existence. This gradual drift reminds us of the patience of nature, and how all things, no matter how monumental, move in their own time. As you imagine these ancient coastlines stretching toward the horizon, realize that the very ground beneath our feet today carries the memory of these immense, silent migrations. Continents on the move, a world in motion. Beyond Gondwana, smaller continental fragments like Laurentia, Baltica, and Siberia also joined this restless waltz. These landmasses drifted independently, sometimes inching toward one another to create new coastlines, and other times pulling apart to form broad, ancient seas. With each movement, mountain chains were born, and deep ocean basins carved out, reshaping life's cradle with every tremor. Picture a world in constant flux, where underwater ridges sprouted like scars across the seafloor, and volcanic arcs cast their shadows across restless waves. Every collision between landmasses created new island chains, while every retreat left behind narrow straits and winding marine corridors. Life responded as it always does. Plankton blooms followed these tectonic dances, feeding swarms of tiny creatures and drawing predators to new hunting grounds. Volcanoes dotted these new fault lines, spewing ash and minerals into the air and enriching nearby waters. It was an age of unpredictable transformation. The shifting continents remind us of how landscapes, like our lives, can change in an instant or over ages, quietly remapping our paths while we carry on, often unaware. The birth of coastal volcanoes. As Gondwana crept closer to the frozen South Pole, tectonic forces along its margins sparked the formation of long, trembling chains of coastal volcanoes. These volcanic arcs belched smoke and ash into Ordovician skies and poured molten rock into shallow seas, crafting newborn islands where waves hissed against cooling lava. The eruption of these coastal volcanoes was both destructive and generous. With each blast, they shaped new lands while minerals from the ash enriched surrounding waters, fueling vast blooms of plankton that fed entire marine ecosystems. Over time, what was once a barren, black landscape was colonized by hardy life forms, from microbial mats to pioneering mollusks. Picture waves foaming against charred shores, the scent of sulfur hanging in the air, while life quietly found its foothold. These fiery upheavals, like the turmoil in our own lives, scattered the fertile seeds of renewal. Both the ancient world and our own hearts remind us, even fire and ash can nurture new beginnings. The formation of deep marine trenches. In places where tectonic plates collided, the seafloor buckled and cracked, forming deep marine trenches. These narrow, abyssal valleys sank miles below the ocean surface, their pitch-black interiors cold and crushing. Few could survive in such a place, yet life, as it always does, found a way. These trenches became both graveyards and sanctuaries. Dead marine life drifted down in an eternal snowfall of organic remains, nourishing strange, luminescent organisms that pulsed and flickered in the gloom. Giant worms, eyeless fish, and resilient crustaceans adapted to life in darkness and pressure, becoming entirely unique species untouched by the chaos above. There's something profoundly human in this image. These deep, secret places, quietly holding life's most fragile threads, much like the hidden corners of our own hearts, where resilience is forged in pressure and silence. In those ancient trenches, life not only survived but quietly thrived, a reminder that strength often blooms in the deepest, darkest places. Sediments of the deep, a silent record. Every upheaval, every storm, every gentle ripple left its mark on the seafloor. Sediments poured down from eroding mountains, mingling with volcanic ash and the remains of ancient creatures. Over the millennia, these layers built up into thick blankets of shale, limestone, and sandstone, silent, unbroken records of the Ordovician world. Each layer tells a story. A bloom of plankton here, a storm surge there, a volcanic eruption captured in a fine band of ash. Paleontologists today read these ancient pages, decoding a narrative written in stone. Fossils of trilobites, crinoids, and ancient cephalopods lie pressed between rock layers like delicate bookmarks in Earth's oldest history. These ancient sediments teach us something essential, that every unnoticed moment, every small act, every forgotten memory layers quietly within us. Our lives, too, accumulate in invisible strata, forming the foundation of who we become. And like the fossilized creatures pressed into stone, the impressions we leave behind shape the stories of those who follow. Tectonics reshaping ecosystems. As the continents drifted and the seafloor reshaped itself, ocean currents and wind patterns adjusted to the new geography. Warm, nutrient-rich waters surged along newly formed coasts, while other regions fell into cold stagnation. Some species, like trilobites and brachiopods, found rich new feeding grounds, while others faded in cooling waters. Entire ecosystems reshuffled. New volcanic islands provided fresh shallows for coral reefs to anchor, while deep marine basins formed isolated pockets for unique species to evolve. Predators changed their hunting grounds, and prey sought refuge in safer waters. Life adapted as it always does. This shifting seascape mirrors our own lives, where sudden changes can either sweep us into richer currents or leave us adrift. The tectonic shifts of the Ordovician world remind us that within every disruption lies both risk and opportunity. Those who adjust, who move with the changing tides, find new places to thrive. And as ancient creatures once sought safety in freshly formed seas, so do we carve out new homes when our foundations move. The invisible hand beneath the waves. At the heart of all this transformation was tectonic motion, the slow, invisible power beneath the waves. These plates moved so gradually their effects seemed like whispers against the roaring clock of geological time. Yet it was this unseen force that forged mountains, shaped oceans, and built the stage where life's ancient dramas played out. This slow, relentless movement serves as a gentle metaphor for our own inner shifts. Much of what transforms us happens quietly, unseen by others. It's the silent resilience, the quiet courage, the steady heartbeat of hope through life's long nights. The tectonics of the earth mirror the tectonics of the soul, subtle, steady, but ultimately world-changing. In both realms, the lesson endures that unseen forces shape our destinies. Just as drifting continents reimagined the seas and skies of an ancient world, so do our invisible transformations prepare us for the landscapes we have yet to discover. 3. Changing marine environments. The chemical composition of ancient seas. Imagine drifting slowly above an ancient ocean, far back in time to the Ordovician period, over 480 million years ago. The seas then were vast and mysterious, their waters colored not by today's deep blue but by shifting shades of green and gray. These colors came from the unique blend of minerals dissolved within, the result of volcanic eruptions, eroding lands, and decaying organic matter. Calcium, magnesium, iron, and other elements mingled constantly, shaping the very nature of the sea. For early marine life, trilobites, brachiopods, and plankton, this chemical mixture was a quiet but powerful force. Calcium ions, especially, allowed many creatures to build protective shells and skeletons, key to their survival in a world full of predators and change. Yet, the chemistry was never still. Storms and volcanic activity continuously altered the water's makeup, sometimes nourishing, sometimes challenging the delicate balance. This constant flux forced life to adapt, to be flexible, and to find ways to thrive amid shifting conditions. This ever-changing ocean mirrors the rhythms inside us, the ups and downs of emotions, the tides of life that ebb and flow. Like the seas, we learn that change is not to be feared but embraced, as it brings growth and renewal. The rich mineral makeup also allowed ancient reefs to grow, becoming bustling hubs of life that created shelter and food for many species. These reefs, built slowly by countless tiny organisms, show us the power of patience and cooperation, lessons we can carry into our own lives. As you imagine these ancient waters, let their quiet, enduring pulse calm your mind and soothe your heart, guiding you gently toward rest and peaceful sleep. The rise and fall of dissolved oxygen. Close your eyes again and imagine the invisible breath of the Ordovician seas. Dissolved oxygen flowing through the water like an unseen lifeline. Oxygen levels in these ancient oceans were never constant. During warmer periods, Tiny photosynthesizing plankton flourished, filling the waters with oxygen and supporting a vibrant web of life. Shallow reefs teemed with creatures filtering water, hunting, and hiding in coral-like structures. But just as life thrived, moments of imbalance appeared. Volcanic eruptions sent ash into the skies, blocking sunlight and upsetting the delicate photosynthetic rhythm. Excess nutrients from decaying plants sometimes caused plankton to explode in number, only to die and deplete oxygen, creating vast, dead zones where few creatures could survive. This ebb and flow of oxygen reminds us of the breath we take, sometimes deep and free, other times shallow and strained. Just like the seas, our inner world cycles through times of ease and struggle. Knowing this helps us trust that difficult moments will pass and fresh energy will return to sustain us. In this ancient ocean's dance of life and death, oxygen was both a giver and taker, shaping the fate of countless species. Its rise allowed complex ecosystems to emerge. Its fall tested resilience and adaptation. As you breathe deeply now, feel yourself connected to this timeless rhythm, letting your breath soothe your body as the ancient seas breathed life into the world long ago. Species resilient to change. In the face of fluctuating waters and shifting chemistry, some ancient creatures endured like quiet champions. Imagine brachiopods, small but tough, clinging to rocks, their shells closing tightly to seal out harmful conditions. Picture crinoids, waving delicate arms in gentle currents, surviving where others could not. Deep beneath, ancient bivalves burrowed in the sediment, protected from tempests above. These survivors didn't conquer by force, but by adapting and enduring. They grew tolerant to lower oxygen, adjusted their shells to whatever minerals were available, and found new niches as conditions changed. Their resilience was a testament to life's power to persist against the odds. Their story speaks gently to us. When storms rage in our lives, strength isn't always in fighting hard, but in bending and adapting, finding refuge and holding on quietly until the skies clear. Think of these creatures as ancient teachers, showing us how to survive life's uncertainties with patience and quiet courage. They remind us that endurance is itself a form of victory. Let this thought comfort you as you drift toward sleep, that within you lies the same resilience, the same capacity to weather change and emerge renewed. How shifting currents redrew marine boundaries. The great oceans of the Ordovician were shaped not only by land and life, but by invisible rivers, vast ocean currents that carried warmth, nutrients, and life itself across the globe. Imagine these currents as ancient arteries, pulsing with energy, flowing and changing course with the movements of continents and shifts in climate. When these currents shifted, so did the boundaries of marine habitats. Warm, oxygen-rich waters could suddenly flood into new regions, bringing life and opportunity. Cold, nutrient-heavy currents might smother thriving reefs, forcing creatures to adapt or move. As landmasses drifted and collided, coastlines disappeared or appeared, opening new passages or closing old ones. Life had to follow these shifting paths, migrating, evolving, or facing extinction. This fluidity mirrors our own life journeys. We are often carried by currents beyond our control, swept toward unknown shores. But within each journey lies possibility, a chance to discover new parts of ourselves, to grow in ways we never imagined. So as you listen to this ancient ocean story, let it remind you that change, though sometimes unsettling, is the current that brings growth and new beginnings. The collapse and renewal of ecosystems. Across millions of years, the Ordovician seas experience cycles of flourishing and decline. Picture vibrant coral-like reefs bustling with life, only to be suddenly silenced by volcanic ash, cooling climates, or shifts in chemistry. These collapses were harsh, leaving empty seafloors and lost diversity. But life is never truly extinguished. Slowly, new species emerged to claim the open spaces. Hardy filter feeders returned, reefs were rebuilt, and ecosystems rewove themselves into fresh patterns. This renewal wasn't a return to what was lost, but a transformation, a rebirth into new forms and possibilities. We see a parallel in our lives. Endings bring grief, but they also make room for new growth. In moments of loss or change, the ground feels barren, but it is here that seeds of hope take root. Allow this vision to soothe you, knowing that renewal follows collapse, that every ending holds a new beginning waiting quietly beneath the surface. The silent architects, microbial mats, beneath the vast, shimmering seas of the Ordovician, where the eyes of larger creatures seldom reached, lay humble carpets of life, microbial mats. These delicate layers of bacteria and algae spread silently across the ocean floor, weaving a living tapestry that held the sediments together and nourished the waters above. Though small and often unseen, these mats played a vital role as caretakers of the ancient marine world. They filtered nutrients, recycled essential elements, and produced oxygen in quiet abundance, creating a foundation where more complex life could emerge. After episodes of destruction, when volcanic ash blanketed the reefs or cold waters wiped out entire communities, these resilient mats were the first to reclaim the barren seabeds. Patient and persistent, they prepared the stage for life to return, nurturing the fragile threads of recovery. In this quiet perseverance, there is a profound lesson for us all. Just as microbial mats support ecosystems without fanfare or applause, so too do small acts of kindness, silent strengths, and unseen efforts hold our own communities and lives together. The gentle, steady pulse of these tiny architects reminds us that endurance and care often happen quietly, forming the roots that sustain new growth and healing. As you breathe deeply, imagine these living carpets stretching endlessly beneath ancient waves, carrying the promise of renewal. Let their silent strength soothe your heart, reminding you that sometimes the most powerful forces work quietly in the background, patiently crafting a future bright with hope. The lesson of constant change. The Ordovician seas were never still. Life and the environment danced together in a ceaseless rhythm of change, a world where no creature or community remained the same for long. This endless flux was both challenge and opportunity, destruction and creation, loss and beginning. Such constant transformation invites us to embrace impermanence in our own lives. Just like the ancient oceans, our inner worlds rise and fall, shift and settle, carry storms and calm. Understanding this helps us find peace, not in resisting change, but in flowing with it, trusting that every ending carries the seed of a new start. As you close your eyes and drift into sleep, picture the vast Ordovician waves carrying ancient life in their timeless embrace. Feel the rhythm of this endless dance, a gentle lullaby of becoming that soothes and reassures. Know that you, too, are part of this grand cycle, ever-changing and ever-growing. Let the tides of transformation wash away worries and fears and carry you softly into restful, healing sleep. Part 6. The Ordovician Legacy. Ancient marine lineages, the guardians of deep time. Close your eyes and imagine the vast, ancient oceans of the Ordovician, alive with creatures whose lineages stretch like timeless threads into the present day. Among them were brachiopods with their hinged shells, trilobites scuttling across the seafloor, and crinoids waving their feather-like arms in the gentle currents. These ancient mariners, some of the earliest complex animals, became the guardians of deep time, living witnesses to the unfolding story of life on Earth. Though the seas have long since changed, many of their descendants still roam our oceans, carrying the echoes of a world almost 500 million years old. These lineages remind us that life is not only fragile but incredibly enduring, able to persist through unimaginable shifts in climate, geography, and ecosystems. Their survival tells a tale of resilience and quiet strength, echoing through the ages like a soft, reassuring heartbeat. As we listen to their ancient song, we are invited to reflect on our own place in the continuity of life, a single note in the vast symphony of existence. These marine guardians teach us patience and endurance, lessons that whisper gently as we close our eyes, easing our minds into rest. In their persistence, we find hope, a promise that even through change and challenge, life's story continues, unfolding gently beneath the waves of time. The preservation of evolutionary genes. Beneath the surface of this ancient marine world, hidden in the cells of those early creatures, lay a precious treasure, the genes that would shape the future of life. These strands of DNA carried instructions not only for survival but for transformation, for adaptation in a world that was never still. Over countless generations, the genes preserved from the Ordovician period acted as blueprints, guiding the emergence of new forms, new abilities, and new ways of living. Through subtle shifts and bold innovations, they allowed life to explore new possibilities, from developing hardened shells to more efficient ways to feed and reproduce. This legacy of evolution is not a frozen snapshot, but a flowing river, continually renewed and reimagined. In this light, the genetic heritage of Ordovician creatures becomes a beacon of continuity and change, a reminder that beneath every moment of stillness is the pulse of life's endless creativity. As you drift toward sleep, imagine this dance of genes weaving through time, a quiet yet powerful force that connects us all, inviting peace and wonder as your dreams take flight. Ordovician as the crucible for Silurian life. The Ordovician period was far more than a mere chapter in Earth's deep history. It was a crucible, a forge in which the foundations for future life were shaped with both fire and patience. Imagine vast ancient oceans, their waters teeming with forms of life that were learning to diversify, adapt, and survive against shifting climates and changing seas. These waters became the birthplace of biological innovation, where the experiments of evolution were tested time and again. As the Ordovician drew to a close, many of its marine creatures had developed adaptations that would carry them forward into the next great chapter, the Silurian period. This was a time when early coral reefs expanded, primitive fish began to show more complex features, and the first steps toward life on land quietly began. The Ordovician seas were a springboard, a deep well from which the vitality of later life would flow. This transition reminds us that every ending in life holds the seed of a new beginning. The world was never static. It was a continual process of transformation and renewal. Just as the Ordovician laid the groundwork for what was to come, so do our own experiences, struggles, and growth prepare us for future chapters in our lives. As you close your eyes tonight, picture the ancient oceans turning slowly, carrying life onward. A soothing rhythm of change that invites you to relax and dream. Life's journey through these periods was a testament to resilience. Despite the upheavals and losses, the promise of new life persevered. This lesson, whispered across 500 million years, offers a comforting reminder that even in times of uncertainty, growth and renewal are always possible, patiently waiting beneath the surface. The geological legacy, fossils, and ancient layers. Beneath the waves and through time, the Ordovician left more than just living descendants. It carved its story into the rocks themselves, embedding a geological legacy that scientists and dreamers alike can explore today. Imagine the slow settling of sediments on ancient seafloors, layers upon layers of fine grains, shells, and organic remains compacting into stone. These strata are the pages of Earth's oldest books, holding fossils that whisper tales of creatures long gone. The fossilized brachiopods, trilobites, and corals tell stories not only of survival but of the intricate ecosystems they once formed. Each fossil is a snapshot of a moment in deep time, a window into the Ordovician Sea's complexity and vibrancy. The rocks of this age also hold minerals and deposits formed by the shifting tides of geologic activity, revealing ancient volcanic eruptions, shifts in sea level, and the slow movement of continents. For us, these geological treasures are more than scientific curiosities. They are reminders that our planet is a living archive, where every rock and fossil carries a memory. As you drift towards sleep, imagine running your fingers across these ancient stones, feeling the heartbeat of Earth's history beneath your touch. It is a comforting thought that beneath the surface of our daily lives lies a deep and enduring past, quietly holding space for our dreams. The global influence, climate, and evolution's ripple. The Ordovician's legacy stretched far beyond the seas it shaped. It influenced the global climate and set evolutionary ripples that would echo for millions of years. Picture a world in constant flux, where rising and falling temperatures, ice ages, and volcanic upheavals molded habitats and shifted ecosystems. These changes affected everything from ocean currents to atmospheric composition, creating a complex dance of environmental forces. These global shifts directly impacted evolution. Species had to adapt to new conditions, migrate to safer waters, or face extinction. The Ordovician's climate dynamics became a powerful sculptor, guiding the branching paths of life. Through these challenges, biodiversity flourished, setting the stage for the explosion of new forms in the Silurian. As you listen softly, consider how this ancient interplay between Earth systems parallels our own lives. We too are shaped by forces often beyond our control: social currents, personal challenges, and internal seasons of change. The Ordovician teaches us that adaptation is part of life's rhythm and that resilience emerges from embracing change, not resisting it. Evolutionary continuity, connecting past and present. One of the most profound legacies of the Ordovician is the continuity of life, the thread that links ancient creatures to modern descendants. Many groups of organisms that emerged or diversified during this period have living relatives today, embodying a living connection across deep time. Imagine tracing your hand through the waters, brushing past the modern counterparts of ancient trilobites, brachiopods, and early fishes. These living fossils carry genetic codes shaped by hundreds of millions of years of natural selection, migration, and adaptation. Their persistence is a testament to the enduring power of evolution's creative process. This continuity offers a quiet assurance. Life's story is not fragmented but a flowing river. Each of us is part of that current, connected to the past and contributing to the future. As you relax into sleep, let this thought ease your mind, that you are a thread in an endless tapestry, woven through time by the gentle hands of nature. Reflection and transition from Ordovician to Silurian. As our journey through the Ordovician draws to a close, it is time to reflect on the lessons it offers. Lessons of resilience, transformation, and the beauty of life's endless unfolding. The Ordovician seas, with their rich biodiversity and shifting climates, remind us that change is the only constant, and from every ending springs a new beginning. The transition into the Silurian marks not just a geological boundary, but a renewal. Coral reefs would grow more complex, fish would evolve new features, and life would take its first steps on land. This passage invites us to embrace change with grace, trusting that every chapter in our own lives holds potential for growth and discovery. So as you close your eyes tonight, imagine the ancient world turning its page, carrying with it the echoes of the Ordovician. Let the rhythms of deep time soothe your thoughts, and allow yourself to drift peacefully into dreams filled with the wonders of life's enduring journey. 2. The geological significance of the Ordovician. The fossil treasures of the Ordovician. Imagine stepping back through the vast corridors of time to an era when the Earth was younger and the oceans reigned supreme over much of the planet. In these ancient seas, countless creatures thrived, lived, and left behind their stories, not in words, but in stone. Today, when we hold a fossil from the Ordovician period, it is like holding a fragile key to an ancient world long gone yet never forgotten. These fossils, whether the delicate shells of brachiopods, the intricate patterns of trilobites, or the skeletal remains of early corals, are echoes of life's artistry etched into the Earth's crust. Each one speaks quietly but powerfully about survival, adaptation, and the unyielding passage of time. As you imagine these relics, picture entire ecosystems flourishing beneath warm, shallow seas. Life was diverse and abundant, with creatures playing roles in complex food webs that sustained their communities. These fossils not only connect us to the biology of the past, but also to the rhythms of change that have shaped our planet. They remind us that beneath the surface of what we see today lies a rich tapestry woven from millions of years of evolution and extinction. Holding these stones, we can feel the pulse of deep time, a steady heartbeat that links our existence to that of ancient oceans, reminding us gently of our place within the endless flow of life, the endless thread of evolution. The Ordovician period is like a foundational chapter in the vast book of life's history. The evolutionary developments from this time wove an unbroken thread that connects ancient marine life to the diversity we cherish today. Many modern groups of marine organisms trace their origins back to Ordovician ancestors, creatures that survived climate upheavals and mass extinctions to leave a legacy encoded in their genes. Picture the steady pulse of life through deep time, where species adapted, flourished, and sometimes vanished, all contributing pieces to the intricate puzzle of biodiversity. Imagine trilobites navigating ancient currents, brachiopods anchoring themselves to rocky outcrops, and early cephalopods venturing boldly through the darkened waters. Every creature played a part in an unfolding symphony of life. Even as ice ages loomed and seas withdrew, evolution persisted, molding new forms from the old. The diversity of shells, fins, and filter feeders flourished in niches carved by shifting seas and chemical tides. This continuity is a testament to nature's resilience and creativity. Through storms and ice ages, life found ways to adapt and thrive. As you listen, let yourself feel comforted by this eternal thread, a living heritage that links you to the earliest waves and reefs. Understand that every creature, including us, is part of a grand, unfolding story of survival, renewal, and unexpected beauty. Inspirations for modern biology. The ancient seas of the Ordovician offer more than history. They provide living lessons for modern science and conservation. The patterns of extinction and recovery, adaptation and survival observed in Ordovician fossils guide researchers in understanding today's changing environments. They remind us that ecosystems are fragile but capable of renewal if given time and care. Imagine scientists peering through microscopes, examining fossils that whisper secrets of resilience and transformation. Picture a researcher tracing the outline of an ancient coral, learning how life once clung to existence through chemical changes and climatic shifts. Think of modern marine biologists studying reef systems, drawing parallels between Ordovician recovery cycles and current oceanic challenges. These lessons inspire efforts to protect today's oceans and their inhabitants, fostering a sense of stewardship rooted in deep time. Conservation strategies drawn from ancient resilience help inform policies for modern marine ecosystems, offering hope in the face of present-day climate shifts. As you gently drift toward rest, picture yourself as part of this ongoing story, a guardian of the delicate balance of life. Feel the quiet reassurance that just as ancient life adapted, so too can we, if we listen to the wisdom embedded in stone and seashell. Let the waves of time carry you gently through eons of resilience and rediscovery. The Ordovicians' role in shaping ocean chemistry. Beneath the surface of those ancient seas, chemical changes played a crucial role in shaping marine life. The Ordovicians saw shifts in ocean salinity, mineral content, and nutrient availability that influenced which organisms thrived and which faded away. These subtle changes set patterns that would influence ocean chemistry for millions of years to come. Visualize the interplay of minerals dissolving and precipitating, the steady cycling of elements feeding life beneath the waves. See clouds of volcanic ash settling over calm seas, enriching waters with vital nutrients. Imagine the greenish glow of plankton blooms, oxygenating the depths, and the silent decay of organic matter settling to the seabed. This dynamic environment created niches for new species and shaped the evolutionary path of ocean dwellers. Oxygen levels waxed and waned, sparking blooms of life and waves of extinction. As you imagine these unseen chemical dances, feel a deep connection to the cycles of nature, ever-flowing, ever-renewing, mirroring the rhythms within ourselves. Understand that change, even when invisible, writes the story of life's persistence. Ordovician tectonics and the blueprint of continents. The movements of continents during the Ordovician era laid the groundwork for the Earth's modern face. Massive landmasses shifted, collided, and drifted apart, influencing ocean currents, climate, and habitats. These tectonic forces shaped coastlines and seabeds, crafting the physical stages upon which life's dramas unfolded. Picture the slow drift of Gondwana and other continents, their movements like a grand, patient dance choreographed by deep earth forces. Mountains rose where plates collided, and deep basins formed where they parted. This shifting geography created new opportunities and challenges for living creatures, sparking evolutionary change and new ecosystems. Along newly formed shores, coral reefs thrived in warm shallows, while cephalopods patrolled the deeper zones. Let yourself be carried along these slow continental journeys, feeling the power of deep time shaping the world beneath your feet. Imagine walking ancient shores as new islands emerged from the sea. These tectonic shifts remind us that while our lives may feel hurried, the planet moves with ancient patience, and from its slow transformations, beauty is born. In every ripple of water, every grain of sand, traces of those colossal movements linger, waiting to tell their stories to attentive hearts. The enduring legacy, a bridge across time. Finally, consider the Ordovician as a bridge, connecting ancient pasts to present and future. Its legacy lives on in the rocks beneath us, the fossils that tell stories, and the living descendants of ancient life. This period reminds us that change is constant, life is resilient, and we are part of a timeless continuum. As you drift into peaceful sleep, imagine yourself floating through time, cradled by Earth's ancient rhythms. See trilobites scuttling along seafloors, hear the gentle lull of prehistoric tides, and feel the pulse of deep time in every grain of sand. Understand that the patterns set in the Ordovician echo in our ecosystems, our climates, and our own bodies. Let the Ordovician story soothe your mind, reminding you that you too are part of this grand, unfolding tale of life and renewal. Rest now, carried by waves of ancien. 3. The global impact of the Ordovician, shaping climate beyond its time. Close your eyes, dear traveler of ancient memories, and picture the Ordovician period as a soft, unseen hand sculpting the canvas of Earth's destiny. Hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the first leaves rustled in the wind, this ancient world began to whisper its influence upon climates yet unborn. The towering glaciers that appeared toward the end of the Ordovician weren't mere frozen relics. They were architects of change, cooling vast landscapes, shifting the breath of the planet itself. Imagine sunlight striking icy expanses, bouncing back to the heavens, and cooling the air that swirled above ancient seas. These colossal glaciers, inching their way across continents, redrew coastlines and stilled rivers. Currents slowed and winds altered their course, setting a pattern that would echo across the ages. Even now, the ancient fingerprint of this cooling period lingers in stone, ice, and memory. As you drift deeper into rest, see the slow, deliberate motion of glaciers sculpting valleys, hear the hush of wind reshaping continents, and feel the patient pulse of oceans adjusting to a changing sky. It is a reminder that even in our hurried lives, the Earth moves in gentle, purposeful rhythms, ever connected to its past. The endless thread of evolution. Imagine a grand, ancient tapestry, each thread a species, each color a chapter in the book of life. The Ordovician was a vibrant section in this tapestry, weaving together countless creatures who danced, fed, and grew in Earth's early oceans. Life surged forward during this time, from tiny plankton to towering nautiloids, crafting a biological masterpiece that would persist far beyond this single era. Envision trilobites scuttling over sun-dappled seafloors, brachiopods gently waving in soft currents, and cephalopods slicing through darkened waters. Each creature played a role in a grand performance, a theater of survival and transformation. The pulse of life persisted through extinctions and ice ages, carrying whispers of ancient resilience into modern reefs and living shells. This continuity offers comfort. Nature, though challenged, endures. The same forces that molded ancient seas shape us too. As you rest, feel the eternal thread that binds you to these early creatures. You are not separate from the waves, the stone, the sky. You are part of an ever-evolving story, one of resilience, rebirth, and gentle, patient change. Inspirations for modern biology. The ancient seas of the Ordovician were more than a chapter in Earth's history. They were lessons etched in limestone, waiting for future hearts to decipher. The patterns of extinction, recovery, and adaptation found in the fossil beds of this period offer modern biologists a quiet, steady wisdom. Imagine scholars in sunlit laboratories, tracing delicate fossil imprints with reverent fingers, each curve and contour telling a tale of life's stubborn will to endure. Picture modern reefs, their inhabitants facing modern challenges, mirroring the recoveries of ancient ecosystems. The story of survival isn't linear. It rises, falls, and rises again, a tide pulled by forces both ancient and immediate. As you settle into sleep's embrace, consider how the resilience of these ancient creatures whispers to you. Every loss is followed by regrowth, every silence by song. Life, like waves upon a shore, finds a way to return. Let that promise cradle you through the night. The Ordovician's role in shaping ocean chemistry. Beneath the waves of ancient seas, invisible changes shaped the lives of creatures both great and small. The Ordovician period ushered in profound shifts in ocean chemistry, the silent architects of ecosystems. Picture mineral-rich currents swirling around coral groves, volcanic ash clouds seeding the depths with nutrients, and invisible gases transforming the breath of the seas. These subtle forces nurtured blooms of plankton, which in turn fed vast populations of filter feeders. Oxygen levels rose and fell like the tide itself, triggering cycles of abundance and scarcity. Such unseen dances directed the course of evolution, determining which species would flourish and which would fade into memory. As you rest, imagine the deep, slow pulse of ancient tides, carrying elements and stories across endless leagues. Know that even the smallest changes, like whispers in the dark, can reshape worlds. Let this truth lull you into a serene understanding that beneath every surface, invisible miracles unfold. Ordovician tectonics and the blueprint of continents. Far below the ocean's surface, the Earth's crust moved with a rhythm both slow and relentless. The shifting continents of the Ordovician played a quiet yet monumental role in crafting the landscapes of tomorrow. Gondwana drifted steadily southward, while smaller landmasses danced their own ancient waltz. Picture vast mountain ranges rising where tectonic plates collided, while elsewhere, new seabeds yawned open to welcome life's earliest adventurers. The collision of stone-shaped coastlines carved deep basins and offered refuge to creatures seeking new homes. These movements reshaped ocean currents, redirected storms, and laid down the stage for future dramas. Imagine walking along a shore as new lands emerge from misty seas, their rocky faces raw and new. Understand that every mountain, valley, and plain beneath your feet was born from these ancient, patient shifts. In every ripple of water and breath of wind, the Ordovician's legacy stirs still. The enduring legacy, a bridge across time. The Ordovician period may have slipped quietly into the past, but its voice still hums through stone and tide. Its fossils whisper stories of resilience, and its ancient seas shaped the blueprint of life itself. It taught the planet about ice and warmth, silence and abundance, extinction and rebirth. Imagine yourself floating through those ancient waters, surrounded by creatures of impossible grace. Hear the lull of prehistoric tides. Feel the pulse of Earth's earliest rhythms. In this moment, know that you are not alone. You are part of a vast, ancient, and ongoing journey. As you drift into sleep, let the ancient breath of the Ordovician cradle you. Let its steady, enduring patience reassure you that life continues, that change can be beautiful, and that the grand story of Earth embraces us all. A gentle farewell to the Ordovician, and a whisper of what comes next. Close your eyes, dear traveler of time, and let your mind sail one last time across the ancient seas of the Ordovician. The air carries the salty breath of distant oceans, and the soft glow of prehistoric sunlight shimmers upon waves that have cradled countless forms of life. As the world stirs in its ancient slumber, let us gather the fragments of this magnificent chapter and weave them into a tender farewell, a lullaby sung by the earth itself. The Ordovician was not merely a chapter in Earth's story. It was a grand, sweeping movement in the symphony of life, a time when our planet learned to breathe deeper, to build coral reefs that shimmered like submerged cities, and to fill its oceans with creatures both strange and wondrous. Imagine vast underwater plains where trilobites scuttled in careful procession and feathery crinoids waved to the rhythm of gentle tides. Cephalopods, adorned with spiral shells, glided through the dimly lit depths, their tentacles tracing unseen currents. This was a world painted in hues of blue and green, alive with silent conversations between predator and prey, between drifting plankton and ancient reefs. Every life form, no matter how small, played a part in the immense network of life, a truth that still echoes in the ecosystems we know today. It was during this time that continents danced slowly across the globe, reshaping the very bones of the earth. Gondwana drifted toward the South Pole, and mountain ranges rose where titanic forces collided. Volcanic ash fell like whispered snowfall upon ocean waves, enriching waters and sparking blooms of life. Even the air changed as plants and plankton increased the oxygen that would one day sustain beings far more complex. And yet, like all things beautiful and fragile, the Ordovician could not last forever. The planet's shifting moods brought cooling winds and icy touch, signaling the world's first great ice age. Glaciers stretched their pale arms across the land, pulling water from the seas and lowering shorelines. Countless species, unable to adapt quickly, faded quietly into the shadows of history. But even in loss, there was resilience. Nature, ever wise and endlessly patient, held tight to the threads of life's tapestry, weaving them into new forms, new paths, new beginnings. This, perhaps, is the deepest lesson the Ordovician leaves us, that endings are never absolute. They are thresholds, gentle crossings between what was and what can be. When you listen closely, you can still hear its voice. In every stone that once formed a seafloor, in every fossil shell weathered by time, in the genes of modern creatures whose ancestors once shared those ancient currents. The Ordovician speaks of survival, of gentle persistence, and of the grace found in transformation. And so it is with us, dear listener. Life, too, carries us through currents of change. There are moments when the world feels as though it's pulling away, when familiar things vanish into the mist, and the path ahead is obscured. We lose jobs, relationships, health, and hope. And in those moments, the lessons of ancient Earth remind us. Change is natural. Loss is a part of the rhythm of life. And with every ebb comes a new tide. Perhaps you've felt it yourself. Those quiet nights when the weight of your own history presses heavy against your chest. When the mistakes you made and opportunities you missed seem louder than the good you've done. In those moments, think of the Ordovician seas, of how even after great loss, the world found its way back to warmth and light. Each day you wake is a small act of resilience. Every breath you take is a quiet rebellion against despair. The ancient oceans whisper that life doesn't ask perfection, only persistence. Not constant triumph, but steady, humble progress. In those moments when anxiety pulls at your mind, when you fear you're falling behind or that you'll never be enough, remember the trilobites. Creatures that lived through countless changes, countless dangers, never seeking glory, only survival. They remind us that worth isn't measured in accolades or milestones, but in the simple, honest act of continuing. Even the great ice ages passed. Even the darkest winters of history gave way to sunlight. And so too will your struggles lessen. Your pains will fade into memory, and what will remain is the strength you built in facing them. In the hush before sleep, when your thoughts are unguarded and your heart speaks truths your waking mind dares not voice, Let these ancient lessons wrap around you like a gentle tide. Let them whisper that it's okay to feel lost, to be uncertain, to grieve the things you've lost. But also, that somewhere within you lies the same resilience that carried life through eons of trial. Let the Ordovician teach you that every end is a doorway, that within your quietest nights, seeds of new beginnings wait for dawn. Every failure you've carried, every disappointment, is not a wall but a stepping stone placed by the tides of your own story. And tomorrow, when you rise, carry this knowledge with you. Know that you are a part of a vast, unbroken chain of life that has weathered cataclysms and blossomed anew. That even when you falter, when the world feels too sharp and cold, you are cradled by the patience of ages. The great oceans of the past were not always calm. They raged, they stilled, they nurtured, and they took. But in every age, life endured, and so shall you. You are not expected to be unbroken. You are only asked to be honest in your struggle, tender with your hopes, and steadfast in your becoming. Remember, too, that others walk their own ancient seas beside you. Though you cannot always see them, there are hearts that beat in quiet rhythm with your own. Every smile shared, every moment of kindness given or received, becomes another thread in the tapestry of resilience. Rest now, dear traveler, and let the Ordovician's lullaby become a promise. That peace lies not in never falling, but in always rising again. And when tomorrow's dawn light touches your face, remember, you carry eons of courage within you, and there is nothing in this world or the next that you cannot endure. A new earth awakens, the Silurian rises. Close your eyes, dear dreamer of ancient worlds, and sense the hush that blankets a planet on the cusp of profound rebirth. The world you once knew, a realm of silent reefs, drifting trilobites, and ancient tides, has passed beyond the veil. And now, beyond that quiet stillness, a new symphony stirs. The earth takes a deeper breath. The sky clears. The ancient seas shimmer with a promise never before imagined. Welcome, traveler, to the Silurian. This is not merely another chapter. It is a dawn, a soft, radiant glow breaking across landscapes no eye has yet seen. The first forests unfurl their fragile leaves, their green tendrils stretching toward a sun reborn. Rivers carve graceful paths through newly revealed earth, and the air is thick with the scent of water and stone preparing to cradle life in ways once thought impossible. The Silurian is a world of beginnings, of bold, fearless experiments by nature herself. Here, the seas hum with new vitality as early fish, sleeker, swifter, armored in plates and scales, master the currents. Coral reefs bloom once more, rebuilt with patience, forming colossal underwater citadels of color and life. And from the misty edges of shorelines, tiny green pioneers dare to rise. No longer content to cling to rocks, they root in the soil, transforming lifeless ground into breathing earth. But perhaps the most extraordinary story of all lies within the atmosphere. For the first time, the air begins to carry the scent of living forests, the exhalation of leaves, the early pulse of oxygen that will one day fill the lungs of creatures yet unimagined. The Silurian is not simply about life surviving. It is about life claiming the world as its own. Picture primitive millipedes weaving through moss-draped stones. Imagine shallow lagoons shimmering with shoals of armored fish, their scales catching the light like scattered jewels. See towering crinoids swaying in the depths, while on land, the first brave insects trace ancient maps upon newly green landscapes. This is a world of bold beauty, fierce, gentle, fragile, and unyielding. The Silurian teaches us that after every darkness comes not just light, but brilliance. That life does not merely endure. It flourishes, evolves, and dares to imagine more. And you, dear traveler, are invited to witness it all. In the episodes to come, we will walk beneath the canopies of the world's first forests. We will witness fish rise from silent depths to become swift, agile hunters. We will hear the first echoes of insects' footsteps upon soft earth. And together, we will stand at the birth of the planet's earliest terrestrial ecosystems, a world reborn not in defiance of extinction, but because of it. So let your heart quicken with wonder. Let your breath slow with the peace of ancient shores. And let the promise of the Silurian wrap around you like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. The story continues, and it begins here, a gentle goodnight whisper. And now, dearest soul, the time has come to let the ancient seas grow quiet. The reefs, the forests of soft green, the rivers that shimmer under young skies. They too rest, their stories curling like mist beneath a blanket of night. You have wandered far this evening, cradled by the hands of deep time, and now you stand upon the shores of sleep. Listen closely, for the earth still hums beneath you, a soft, ancient lullaby, woven from the sigh of gentle waves and the hush of wind through primitive leaves. It is a song older than stone, older than stars, a melody that has soothed countless creatures before you and will cradle many more long after. Let your thoughts now drift like leaves upon a slow, endless current. There is no need to hold them tight, no reason to chase their shapes. Let them float, light as mist, dissolving into the calm. The world outside your window softens, the distant hum of the city quiets, and within you, a tender warmth grows, like the first light of dawn beneath ancient trees. Picture yourself lying beside a calm, ancient sea. The sky above you stretches vast and unbroken, scattered with silent stars, each one a tiny flame, carrying stories older than memory. Feel their gentle glow settling upon your skin, a hush of silver light wrapping you safe. The tides pulse softly at the shore, a heartbeat you can feel in your bones. With every breath, you are carried deeper into the embrace of stillness. Know that you belong here, not just tonight, but always. You are a thread in this ancient tapestry, your quiet presence no less important than the tallest reef or the smallest stone. In a world of endless stories, yours is tender and bright, a light flickering bravely against the dark. The journey of life is long, with seasons of calm and storm, of bloom and fallow. Yet, like the ancient forests, you too endure. Like the earliest fish, you too find new paths to swim. Like the tender plants upon the shore, you lift your face to the sun, even when skies grow heavy. And so now let yourself rest. There is nothing more to chase. The world will turn gently while you sleep. The rivers will sing, the forests will dream, and the ancient oceans will cradle your spirit in their endless tide. Sleep well, dear one. Dream softly. The earth watches over you, and tomorrow, a new dawn will rise. One you have helped to shape, simply by being here. Good night from Sleepy History. You are safe. You are loved. You are home.